Welcome back, night travelers. Tonight, we re-stepping through the cracked gates of Ohio's forgotten fairgrounds, places where laughter once filled the air, where carousel music drifted through summer evenings, and where now only the wind and whispers remain. These are not just fields of memory, they are stages of sorrow. Every Ferris wheel, every livestock barn, every dim midway carries the weight of tragedy. So sit back, turn off the lights, and listen closely, because the past still echoes across these haunted fairgrounds. The Stark County Fairgrounds in Canton, Ohio, has long been a place of community gatherings, laughter, and celebration. Every year, its fields fill with bright lights, carnival rides, and the smell of popcorn as families attend the famous Carnival of Horrors, one of the region's most beloved Halloween attractions. But as the crowds leave and the lights fade, a different kind of presence awakens. Beneath the surface of the fairgrounds' festive charm lies a history marked by tragedy and whispers of the supernatural. When the laughter dies and the midway grows quiet, some say the echoes that remain do not belong to the living. Long before the fairgrounds became a site for modern festivals, it was a gathering place for local farmers, traders, and performers. Traveling circuses once passed through Canton in the early 1900s, bringing with them animals, sideshow acts, and a touch of the bizarre. Old records mention a small troupe of entertainers who performed at the fairgrounds during the 1920s. Among them was a clown known simply as Smiley Jack, famous for his red-painted grin and uncanny ability to make both children and adults laugh. His performances were legendary until the night tragedy struck. In the summer of 1923, a fire broke out in the livestock pens behind the main fairgrounds. Accounts from the time described the blaze as sudden and ferocious, fueled by dry hay and wooden stalls. The flames spread quickly, consuming several nearby tents and trapping both animals and people. Among the victims, some said, were a handful of circus workers who slept near the pens, including Smiley Jack himself. The fire was eventually contained, but the fairgrounds never felt the same afterward. The smell of smoke lingered for weeks, and local residents claimed to hear the distant sounds of laughter and cries echoing from the ruins long after the last ember had died. For decades, the story of the fire faded into local legend. The fairgrounds continued to operate, hosting countless events from livestock shows to concerts to the now famous Halloween attractions. Yet strange occurrences persisted. Employees working late at night often reported hearing footsteps crunching across the gravel when no one was around. Doors in storage buildings opened and closed on their own. Lights flickered inexplicably, even in newly wired sections of the grounds. One worker claimed that while locking up the main gate, he heard the faint sound of carnival music drifting on the wind, soft, distorted, and fading as though from another time. Then came the reports of the clown. Visitors began describing sightings of a figure dressed in old-fashioned circus attire wandering the fairgrounds after hours. Some saw him standing near the livestock barns. Others spotted him near the midway, where the rides and games would be set up during festivals. Witnesses described him as tall, wearing a faded costume with a red bow tie and a face half hidden behind cracked white paint. His grin was unmistakable, wide, crooked, and unsettlingly human. A few claimed he waved before disappearing into the darkness. Security footage occasionally captured brief flashes of movement, a blur of white and red only for the cameras to malfunction moments later. Paranormal investigators have taken a keen interest in the Stark County Fairgrounds over the years. During overnight investigations, electronic voice phenomena (EVP) recordings have captured faint laughter, whispers, and even the sound of carnival music playing from seemingly nowhere. Motion sensors placed in empty barns have been triggered with no visible source. Cold spots, sudden drops in temperature, have been detected near the old livestock area where the 1920s fire reportedly began. One investigator described hearing a raspy chuckle echo behind him, followed by the sound of something dragging lightly across the floor. When he turned, he found a single red balloon resting in the corner, untouched. Locals, too, have their own stories. Some residents who live near the fairgrounds claim that on still nights, especially in late October, they can hear faint laughter carried on the wind. A few insist they've seen a flickering light near the livestock barns, as though someone were carrying a lantern through the empty grounds. Others recall feeling watched while walking their dogs along the perimeter fence. Even during daytime visits, visitors report feeling a strange heaviness in the air and energy that seems to hum beneath the fairground's cheerful exterior. Workers who prepare the grounds for the Carnival of Horrors every autumn often report eerie incidents in the weeks leading up to the event. Tools go missing only to reappear in odd places. Generators turn on by themselves. Rides that haven't been connected to power sources suddenly creak or spin slightly, as if stirred by unseen hands. Several crew members have quit after experiencing what they described as too much activity during setup nights. One former worker claimed he saw a man in clown makeup staring at him from behind a trailer, only to vanish when he approached. Some believe Smiley Jack's spirit remains tied to the fairgrounds, replaying his final moments or continuing his eternal act. Others think the energy from the tragic fire created a kind of spiritual echo and imprint of the past that refuses to fade. Skeptics suggest the reports are the result of overactive imaginations fueled by the Halloween season and the fairground's spooky reputation. Yet even those who dismiss the stories admit that there's something undeniably strange about the place after dark. During paranormal investigations, one recurring theme stands out: laughter. Soft at first, barely audible, it often grows louder before abruptly stopping. Sometimes it sounds joyful. Other times it carries a hollow, mournful tone. Investigators who have experienced it firsthand describe it as unlike any sound they've heard before, either fully human nor fully mechanical, as though coming from another realm entirely. To this day, the Stark County Fairgrounds continues to thrive as a hub of entertainment and community life. Families gather for the annual fair. Music festivals fill the air with excitement, and thrill seekers flock to the Carnival of Horrors. But those who know the fairground's deeper story can't help but glance toward the old barns when the sun sets and the laughter of the living fades. For in the silence that follows, another laughter rises, one that belongs to the past, echoing endlessly through the shadows of a place where joy and tragedy forever intertwine. The Jackson County Fairgrounds in Wellston, Ohio, may be known today for its haunted barn attraction during the fall season. But the stories that echo through its grounds stretch back far before the Halloween decorations ever appeared. Beneath the laughter of fairgoers and the bright lights of carnival rides lies a much older tale, one of tragedy, lingering spirits, and unexplained encounters that have earned the fairgrounds a reputation as one of the most haunted places in southern Ohio. During the day, the fairgrounds appear ordinary enough. The barns stand in neat rows. The grandstand looms quietly over the empty field, and the scent of hay still clings to the air from past livestock shows. But once the crowds disappear and the night settles in, the atmosphere changes. The air grows still, the silence feels heavy, and those who remain often describe the distinct sense that they are not alone. Workers setting up for events after dark have long reported the sound of boots crossing the wooden floors inside the old barns, echoing steadily as if someone were pacing the length of the building. Yet when they look, the aisles are empty. These sounds are often accompanied by a feeling, an almost physical pressure in the air, as though someone unseen is watching closely from just beyond sight. The footsteps sometimes move toward the stalls, stop abruptly, and then fade into nothingness. One worker, convinced it was a trespasser, once followed the noise into the deepest part of the barn. When he turned the corner, the air suddenly grew colder, and a shadow passed across the far wall, vanishing before his flashlight beam touched it. He left the building immediately and refused to lock up alone again. The most well-known story among locals involves the caretaker who once lived on the fairgrounds property. His name, recorded in county accounts, was James Doherty, and for years he kept the fairgrounds running smoothly, tending to the barns, fences, and event preparations. Late one autumn night, while checking the livestock pens, Doherty claimed to have seen a man standing at the far end of the barn. The stranger wore work clothes and a wide-brimmed hat, his posture stiff and unmoving. Believing it to be a farmer retrieving an animal, Doherty called out, but the man gave no response. As Doherty approached, he noticed a thin mist forming around the figure. Within seconds, the man's shape blurred, dissolved, and drifted upward, leaving only the faint scent of smoke and the echo of his own boots against a wooden floor. When Doherty later told his story, locals knew immediately who the figure must have been. They spoke of an old legend tied to the Fairgrounds, one that predated the current structures by decades. According to local lore, the spirit haunting the barn is that of Dr. Ryle's son, a young man who met an untimely end near the Fairgrounds in the early 1900s. Dr. Ryle was a respected physician who lived just outside of what his only son, Samuel, was said to be hardworking and kind, often helping farmers with chores and assisting his father with minor medical duties. One summer afternoon, while helping to load livestock into pens near the Fairgrounds, Samuel suffered a head injury after being struck by a frightened horse. He was carried to his father's home, but despite all efforts to save him, he died within hours. His death cast a long shadow over the community, and many claimed that the grief-stricken doctor rarely left his home again. It wasn't long after the accident that strange things began happening at the Fairgrounds. Farmers working late into the night reported hearing someone calling their names in a soft voice, only to find no one nearby. Others swore they saw a young man standing by the cattle stalls, his face pale, his hat pulled low. Some even claimed to hear quiet sobbing carried by the wind across the fields. As the years passed, sightings continued, always the same apparition of a man near the barns, fading into mist when approached. Paranormal investigators who have visited the Jackson County Fairgrounds confirmed that the site carries unusual energy. During late-night sessions, electronic voice phenomena, EVP devices, have picked up faint murmurs, and one recording reportedly captured a single whispered word, "Father." Cold spots often appear suddenly, especially near the center of the old livestock barn, where the wood seems to hold an unnatural chill even in midsummer. Equipment batteries drain inexplicably, and motion detectors occasionally triggered with no visible source of movement. Those who have experienced these phenomena firsthand describe an atmosphere that feels both mournful and protective, as though the spirit is not malicious, but simply lost, drawn back to the place where his life ended. Several caretakers have said they feel an almost gentle presence guiding them, particularly when working alone. One worker recalled tripping on a loose board near the stalls and swore that an unseen hand steadied him before he fell. Others have felt soft brushes against their arms or heard low, indistinct murmurs in their ears when the barns are completely empty. Despite these ghostly tales, the Fairgrounds remain a place of life and excitement. Every summer, crowds return for the county fair, bringing joy and laughter to a site where sorrow once lingered. During the fall, the haunted barn attraction brings thrill seekers from all over Ohio, eager to experience its manufactured scares. Yet those familiar with the Fairgrounds' history know that the staged frights pale in comparison to the genuine unease that sometimes settles in when the crowds are gone. Workers closing up after an event often speak in hushed tones about flickering lights, the echo of boots walking behind them, and the faint shadow of a man watching from the end of the barn. Some believe that the spirit of Dr. Ryle's son remains not out of torment, but out of duty. Perhaps he feels tied to the Fairgrounds, where he once worked and died, unwilling to move on from the place that defined his final moments. Others think the energy of the fire, livestock, and constant human activity over the decades has created a thin veil between worlds, allowing echoes of the past to occasionally bleed through. Whether it is the tragic memory of a young man lost too soon, or something deeper embedded in the land itself, one thing remains certain. When darkness falls over the Jackson County Fairgrounds, the air carries more than the scent of hay and wood. It carries whispers, footsteps, and a lingering sadness that defies time. Those who linger too long after closing often leave with the unsettling certainty that someone unseen still walks the barn's boots creaking softly on wooden floors, forever watching, forever waiting beneath the dim glow of the fairground lights. Fairfield County Fairgrounds in Lancaster, Ohio, has stood for generations as a gathering place for the community, a place of laughter, competition, and celebration. But beneath the layers of county pride and carnival nostalgia lies something that doesn't quite rest. Long after the lights go out and the last fairgoer leaves, the fairgrounds come alive again, whispering with echoes of a time long gone. The old round barn is the centerpiece of these strange happenings. Its domed roof, weathered beams, and circular design make it one of the most recognizable landmarks in the county. During the day, it's a picturesque relic, visited by families and photographers. But at night, it's something else entirely. Locals who live nearby have long claimed to hear faint music drifting through the air, a calliope tune from an old-fashioned carnival that no longer exists. It's a melody both cheerful and eerie, as if time itself got stuck between laughter and sorrow. The story begins in the late 1800s, when the Fairfield County Fairgrounds was a bustling hub for festivals and traveling shows. Carnivals brought rides, games, and bright lights that dazzled small-town Ohio. One of the most beloved attractions was the carousel that once stood inside the round barn, built by hand and adorned with intricate wooden horses. It was said to be the pride of Lancaster. Families gathered around it, children's laughter filling the air as the band organ played its cheerful, tinny tunes. But in the autumn of 1912, tragedy struck. A fire broke out during the fair, spreading rapidly through the fairgrounds. Witnesses said it began near the carousel, perhaps from a lantern or electrical spark. Within minutes, flames devoured the wooden horses and beams of the round barn. Panic filled the air, screams mingled with the sound of cracking timber and stampeding animals trying to flee the barns nearby. When the fire was finally extinguished, several people were missing, and at least one body was found in the ashes of the carousel, an attendant who had tried to save the organ and the horses. The fair rebuilt, of course. The community moved on, but the fire left a mark, both physical and spiritual. The round barn was restored, but those who have been inside after dark say the air feels colder near the center, where the carousel once stood. They describe hearing faint footsteps circling the room, accompanied by a distant, ghostly tune, the same calliope song that played before the fire began. In the years since, countless visitors have reported strange experiences. During setup for the annual fair, workers often report feeling as if they're being watched. Tools go missing, only to reappear in strange places. Lights flicker without reason. One worker claimed he was sweeping the barn one evening when he heard what sounded like a child's laughter echoing through the rafters. When he looked up, he saw a fleeting shadow, small, like that of a child, dart across the upper loft before vanishing into thin air. Another story comes from a photographer who was hired to capture the fairgrounds for a local magazine. She entered the round barn one misty morning, just after sunrise. The air was still and heavy, her breath visible in the cold. As she snapped photos, her camera malfunctioning, images came out blurred, distorted, or filled with strange, glowing orbs hovering near the center of the barn. In one photo, faint outlines of what looked like carousel horses could be seen behind the haze, though there was nothing physical there. Some paranormal investigators have visited the site, drawn by these persistent reports. They've captured unusual readings, temperature drops, electromagnetic spikes, and electronic voice phenomena. In one chilling recording, a soft, almost melodic humming could be heard. When played back, it seemed to match the rhythm of an old carnival song. Others claimed to hear whispers, fragments of laughter, and once, the faint sound of a man's voice saying, "Stay back." Locals often tell visitors about the ghost of the carousel attendant, said to still wander the fairgrounds, ensuring that no one else meets the same fate. He's described as a man in work clothes and suspenders, his face blurred by smoke or shadow. Witnesses who claim to have seen him say he doesn't seem malevolent, only sad, as though forever searching for something lost in the fire. Children sometimes report seeing him during the fair, standing near the barn doors, watching quietly before disappearing when approached. Then there are the orbs. Visitors have taken hundreds of photos over the years, and in nearly every one, strange orbs of light appears, sometimes blue, sometimes gold, hovering where the carousel once stood. Some believe these are the souls of those lost in the fire, still dancing in the circle where joy turned to tragedy. Every October, during the fair's closing night, a curious phenomenon occurs. As the rides shut down and the crowds fade, a faint melody can sometimes be heard across the grounds. Security guards, vendors, and cleanup crews have all mentioned it. The music comes from nowhere and everywhere, at once a ghostly tune carried on the breeze. It always seems to stop the moment anyone tries to follow it. There's a local saying among the older residents of Lancaster: when you hear the calliope sing, the past is dancing again. Some take comfort in it, believing it's just the fair spirit's history, refusing to be forgotten. Others find it unsettling, a reminder that joy and tragedy are forever entwined on those fairgrounds. The round barn stands today as both a historic landmark and a quiet memorial. Visitors still come to see it, drawn by its beauty and mystery. And though the laughter of modern fairs has long since replaced the cries of the old carnival, the air around that barn still hums with something otherworldly. The Meigs County Fairgrounds in Pomeroy, Ohio, may look like any other rural fairground: quiet barns, open fields, and the faint scent of hay still lingering in the air long after the last fairgoer has gone home. But once night falls, the landscape changes. The laughter and music fade, and in their place comes something far more unsettling: a phantom voice echoing from the woods, calling out names that no one recognizes. Locals say it's the echo of a tragedy that unfolded more than a century ago, when a train derailed near the site in 1893 and left behind a darkness that never quite lifted. According to local history, the accident occurred late one summer night. The old Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad line cut close to where the fairgrounds now stand. It was a freight and passenger line that connected small towns across southern Ohio, a vital artery for trade and travel in the 19th century. On that night, a storm had rolled in from the Ohio River: heavy rain, lightning, and winds strong enough to bend trees. The train, already running behind schedule, struggled along the slick tracks. Somewhere near Pomeroy, the rain loosened the soil beneath a small bridge, weakening the ground. As the locomotive approached, a loud crack split the night. The earth gave way beneath the first cars, and the engine plunged into the ravine below, dragging the rest of the train with it. The crash was heard for miles: a shriek of twisting metal, the roar of steam, and the cries of passengers who never made it out. By dawn, the rain had stopped, and the townspeople rushed to the site. The wreckage was a tangle of steel and splintered wood, scattered across the muddy ravine. Survivors were few. Those who made it out alive spoke of chaos: fire breaking out among the debris, the hiss of escaping steam, and the desperate shouts of names in the dark. For weeks, workers combed the area, recovering what they could. But many victims were never identified. Their names, their lives, and their final moments were swallowed by the river fog and the passage of time. Today, the Meigs County Fairgrounds sits not far from where that wreck took place. Most people don't think twice about it, but those who've been there after dark know that the past is not entirely gone. Strange things happen near the tree line where the woods meet the edge of the fairground. Even when the air is still, visitors say they hear movement: branches cracking, footsteps pacing just out of sight. Sometimes it's followed by a sound like distant metal scraping or the low, rhythmic clank of a train wheel turning on a track that no longer exists. Fair workers tell stories of setting up for the fair in the early mornings and hearing voices drifting from the forest. The voices are faint at first, almost conversational, but then one rises above the others, a single voice crying out a name, sometimes two, sometimes three. No one recognizes them. One year, a man who'd been helping with the livestock exhibits heard a woman's voice calling Thomas over and over, her tone sharp and panicked. When he walked toward the trees to investigate, the air grew cold, the fog thickened, and the voice stopped. Later, he learned that one of the victims of the 1893 derailment was listed only as T.I.H., a name that no one in town could ever match to a full identity. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to the fairgrounds for years, hoping to capture evidence of what locals have long whispered about. Some bring recorders, others thermal cameras or motion sensors. Many have left with more questions than answers. One team recorded what they described as metallic clanging near the edge of the wood shop, repetitive sounds like an iron coupling breaking apart. Yet there was nothing physical nearby to explain it. On another night, an investigator played back an EVP recording taken inside one of the barns. Beneath the static came a faint sound, distant screams, muffled as though heard through layers of time and rain. Even those who don't believe in ghosts admit there's something eerie about the place. During the annual fair, when the lights flicker and the midway fills with music, a strange wind sometimes sweeps in from the woods. It carries with it the faint smell of smoke and something else, something metallic, like the scent of old iron or rust. A few fairgoers have claimed to see flashes of light deep among the trees, as though lanterns were swaying in the darkness. But when they look closer, the lights vanish. Some say the phantom voice belongs to a mother, searching for her child to passengers who perished in the wreck. Others think it's the conductor himself, still trying to warn the train that never stopped in time. And then there are those who believe the fairgrounds were simply built too close to tragedy, that the soil itself remembers. One chilling story comes from a young couple who camped near the fairgrounds one summer night. Around midnight, they were awakened by what they thought was the sound of a train whistle, faint and distant. The strange part was that no trains had passed through that area for decades. The sound grew louder, echoing through the valley, followed by the unmistakable rumble of wheels and a deep metallic groan. The couple stood outside their tent, staring into the dark, but there was nothing, no light, no engine, no track. Then came the voice, a woman calling names in the night, her tone desperate, fading into sobs that echoed until dawn. The next morning, they packed up and left, shaken and pale. Locals who heard their story simply nodded. "That's not the first time," one of them said, "and it won't be the last." Today, the Meigs County Fairgrounds remains a beloved community site, filled with laughter, livestock shows, and carnival lights. But when the fair is over and the grounds fall silent, the past begins to stir again. The phantom voices return to the woods. The metallic echoes rise from nowhere, and the wind carries a name or two across the fields. The Richland County Fairgrounds, in Mansfield, Ohio, has long been a hub of community life, home to summer fairs, concerts, livestock shows, and autumn festivals that fill the air with the scent of popcorn and fried dough. But once the lights dim and the crowds disperse, something else seems to awaken beneath the quiet hum of the night. Locals whisper that the fairgrounds hold more than the laughter of fair. They say the ghosts of men long gone prisoners from the nearby Ohio State Reformatory still wander the grounds, bound not by bars but by memory. The Ohio State Reformatory looms just a few miles away, a Gothic fortress of stone and iron that has witnessed over a century of pain, isolation, and death. Built in the late 1800s, the reformatory was designed to reform young offenders through discipline and hard labor. But over the decades, it became a place of despair. The walls echo with tales of violence, suicides, and the tortured cries of men who never left. Visitors to the Prison Term Museum often speak of ghostly figures, unexplained cold spots, and voices calling out in the dark. But in recent years, strange activity has been reported beyond its grounds, seeping into the fairgrounds just down the road, as if the prison's energy could not be contained. It began with whispers among fair worker, stories shared late at night while setting up rides or cleaning up after an event. Some said they saw shadowy figures moving along the perimeter fence of the fairgrounds. At first, they thought it was security or teenagers sneaking in. But when they approached, the figures would vanish, fading into the dark before their eyes. One man swore he saw a person in an old gray uniform, the kind prisoners once wore in the early 1900s, standing by the Ferris wheel. He turned away for just a second, and when he looked back, the figure was gone, leaving only the faint impression of footsteps in the dirt. During setup for the annual county fair, workers often stay late into the night under floodlights, assembling rides and booths. It's during these long hours that the eeriness becomes most palpable. Machinery creaks when untouched, lights flicker without explanation, and voices low, distant, and desperate echo faintly across the empty grounds. "Help me," one worker claimed to hear, as though whispered right behind him. When he turned, no one was there. One of the fair supervisors, a man who's worked the grounds for decades, recalled a particularly chilling night years ago. He was checking the livestock barns after midnight when he noticed a man walking near the horse stalls. The man wore striped pants, a tattered work shirt, and a flat cap clothing, far too old-fashioned for the time. Thinking he was a drifter, the supervisor called out, but the man didn't respond. He simply turned his head slightly, revealing hollow, sunken eyes, and walked toward the outer fence. The supervisor hurried after him, but as the figure reached the fence line, he dissolved into the air like mist. The next morning, the supervisor mentioned what he'd seen to one of the older locals. The man nodded slowly and told him about the escapees prisoners from the reformatory who had fled across the countryside during its long and troubled history. Some were caught, others vanished. It wasn't impossible, he said, that their restless souls might still be wandering nearby. Paranormal investigators have since taken an interest in the Fairgrounds, drawn by its proximity to one of Ohio's most haunted landmarks. Teams have captured odd readings on EMF meters near the grandstand and the animal barns, where electrical interference should be minimal. Some have recorded faint voices, mostly indecipherable. But once or twice a word seems to form a "sir," a "warden," or a chilling "let me out." During a quiet weekday afternoon, one investigator placed motion sensors near the old fencing that borders the backfield. Moments later, the sensors triggered in sequence, as though someone or something was pacing along the line. But the cameras showed nothing, not even a shadow. A few steps later, a second device captured what sounded like the heavy drag of a chain being pulled across the ground, faint yet unmistakable. Even fairgoers have experienced the strange atmosphere, though most dismiss it as tricks of the imagination. During the county fair, when the music blares and lights flash, the air sometimes carries the scent of burning coal or engine oil scents, long associated with the reformatory's old workshops. A few visitors claim to have felt sudden chills, as though someone brushed past them in the crowd, only to turn and find themselves alone. One summer evening, a ride operator told a story that spread quickly among the local teens. While closing down his attraction for the night, he noticed a group of men standing beyond the fence, half hidden by the shadows. They appeared to be watching silently, their heads low, their postures stiff. He waved, assuming they were security or maintenance staff. None responded. He turned to finish his work, and when he looked again, the men were gone. Later, he mentioned the incident to his boss, who told him no one had been working that side of the grounds. When he described their clothing, striped shirts, dark pants, and caps, the color drained from his boss's face. "That's how the prisoners used to dress," he said quietly. Locals say the fairgrounds and the reformatory share the same land. Spiritually speaking, both places hold memories of humanity at its most vulnerable: joy and despair, freedom and confinement. Perhaps it's that emotional energy that ties them together, a residual force echoing across time. The fairgrounds may celebrate life and community, but when night falls, it becomes something else, a place where laughter fades into whispers, and the ghosts of Mansfield's past come out to walk. Late at night, those who live nearby sometimes hear sounds that shouldn't exist. A faint metallic clank, like cell doors closing in the wind. The shuffle of footsteps on gravel. A low, mournful whistle carried across the fields. Some have even claimed to see distant figures moving along the horizon, men in uniform, marching silently toward nowhere. The Fayette County Fairgrounds in Washington Courthouse, Ohio, looks ordinary enough by day: fields of green grass, white fences, and old barns that creak with age. Every summer, families gather there for the annual fair, filling the grounds with laughter, music, and the familiar smell of fried dough. But when the sun sets and storm clouds roll in over the open fields, a different atmosphere settles over the fairgrounds. The place takes on a strange, almost mournful energy, as though the land itself remembers the tragedy that once struck it. Locals say that when the wind begins to howl and thunder shakes the sky, you can still hear the cries of those who never escaped that terrible storm of 1944. It was a summer afternoon that turned dark far too quickly. The fair was in full swing, and dozens of families had gathered to enjoy the rides and exhibitions. Farmers showed off their best livestock. Children ran through the midway with cotton candy. And the old barns were filled with the comforting sounds of animals shifting in their stalls. But around 4 p.m., the air changed. A heavy stillness fell across the fairgrounds. Birds went silent, and the air felt thick and electric. A few older farmers, experienced with the land, knew something wasn't right. They looked at the sky and saw the color drain from it gray, then green, then nearly black. Moments later, the tornado siren sounded. People rushed for shelter. Many crammed into the barns, believing the thick wooden walls would protect them from whatever was coming. But what came wasn't a passing storm. Witnesses later described the tornado as a roaring wall of destruction, a dark, spinning mass that tore across the fields like a living thing. It hit the fairgrounds directly, tearing roofs from buildings and hurling debris through the air like shrapnel. The barns that had offered safety were ripped apart in seconds, collapsing onto the people and animals inside. When the storm finally passed, silence fell over the fairgrounds. The fair's bright banners hung in tatters from splintered poles. The midway was gone. What had been a place of laughter was now a field of wreckage and sorrow. Dozens were injured, and several lives were lost, men, women, and children who had sought refuge from the storm, along with the animals that had once been the pride of local farmers. For days afterward, the town of Washington Courthouse mourned. Volunteers worked through the wreckage, searching for survivors and tending to the wounded. The barns were rebuilt over time, but something about the fairgrounds never felt the same. Those who worked there said the air felt heavy, especially before rain. Animals in the stalls would act strangely, refusing to enter certain corners or staring into empty space as if watching something unseen. By the late 1950s, stories began to spread of ghostly sounds echoing through the fairgrounds during storms. The first reports came from the night watchmen who patrolled the area after hours. One guard claimed he heard the distant whinny of a horse long before any livestock had returned to the property. Another reported the sound of a child crying for help, carried faintly on the wind. When he followed the voice toward one of the rebuilt barns, he found the doors swinging open and shut violently, even though the night was still. During county fairs, some vendors began to notice strange occurrences as well. One woman setting up her booth in the early morning hours heard what sounded like footsteps walking behind her on the gravel path. When she turned around, no one was there, but the air carried the faint scent of hay and something metallic, like blood. The storm's anniversary, in particular, seems to awaken the spirits that linger there. Locals say that if you stand near the oldest barn when thunder begins to rumble, you might hear the sound of voices inside, men shouting, animals panicking, and a high, shrill whistle that cuts through the air. Paranormal investigators who have visited the fairgrounds describe the energy there as sorrowful, almost oppressive. EMF meters spike without reason, and temperature drops have been recorded in areas where victims once took shelter. In one investigation, a group reported capturing an EVP recording of what sounded like a man's voice saying, "Get down," followed by the unmistakable creak of wood splintering under pressure. Another team described a strange phenomenon during a lightning storm, dim lights flickering across the field, like lanterns being carried by unseen hands. They tried to chase them down, but every time they got close, the lights vanished. Local residents, many of whom grew up hearing stories of the tornado, believe the fairgrounds hold residual energy from that day. It's not malicious, they say, just restless. The spirits seem to relive the panic, the confusion, and the loss whenever storms return. During quiet summer nights, when lightning flashes in the distance, some claim to hear the faint sound of carnival music drifting through the air, music that no longer exists. One elderly farmer, whose father had survived the 1944 storm, shared a chilling account before he passed away. He said that every year, near the anniversary, he would walk by the fairgrounds to pay his respects. One evening, he heard the sound of hoofbeats in the mud and turned to see a gray horse standing near the fence. Its mane was wet and tangled, its body streaked with something dark. He approached it slowly, calling softly, but the horse looked straight at him, eyes filled with something he couldn't describe, sadness, maybe recognition, and then it vanished into thin air. In recent years, The Fayette County Fairgrounds has continued to thrive as a community space. Families still gather there each summer, unaware of the whispers carried on the wind. Yet every so often, especially when thunderstorms sweep across southern Ohio, those who work the late shifts claim the fairgrounds come alive again. The smell of rain mixes with something older, the scent of hay, sweat, and blood. Doors slam open without cause. The air hums with unseen energy. And faintly, from somewhere near the barns, comes the sound of crying soft, distant, and heartbreakingly human. At the Portage County Fairgrounds in Randolph, Ohio, the laughter of children and the bright hum of carnival rides hide a darker legacy, one that comes alive when the last light flickers out. The fairgrounds, a centerpiece of small-town tradition, draw thousands each summer with the smell of popcorn, the sound of calliope tunes, and the glittering Ferris wheel turning against a twilight sky. Yet when night deepens and the crowds go home, a different sound takes over, a faint, rhythmic whistling that echoes across the empty midway. Locals call him the Whistling Man, and those who've heard his eerie tune never forget it. The legend dates back to 1938, when a fair worker named Henry Dorsey was killed in a tragic accident. Henry was known by everyone at the fair, a wiry, good-natured man in his 40s. He could fix anything that squeaked or jammed, from the carousel gears to the Ferris wheel's old iron joints. He had a habit of whistling as he worked 3 sharp notes, like a tune without an ending. Children would imitate it as they followed him through the fairgrounds, and his cheerful whistle became part of the summer soundscape. But one humid August evening, Henry's whistle stopped. Witnesses said he had been repairing one of the Ferris wheel-esque carriages at the end of the day, just as dusk fell. The operator had stepped away, unaware that Henry was still in the upper framework. When the ride was tested, it began to move, and Henry lost his footing. He fell nearly 30 feet onto the packed dirt below. The crowd that had lingered after dark screamed as his body hit the ground. Henry was gone before help arrived. For days afterward, workers said they could still hear his whistle echoing through the fairgrounds at closing time. At first, they thought it was just memory, a trick of the mind. But when the Ferris wheel lights dimmed and the ride shut down, the tune would drift faintly through the air. 3 clear notes, repeated again and again. Over the years, people have tried to explain it. Some say the wind catches the carnival flags just right, creating a musical tone. Others claim pranksters hide among the tents, mimicking the whistle to scare newcomers. But those who have heard it up close insist it's something else entirely. A retired security guard named Joe Miller worked a fair for nearly 30 years. He once described locking up the grounds one September night, long after the crowds had gone. As he walked past the Ferris wheel, he heard the tune soft at first, then sharp and close, as if someone were standing just over his shoulder. When he turned, no one was there. The air smelled faintly of machine oil, and one of the Ferris wheel's gondolas swayed, though there was no wind. It wasn't just a whistle, Joe said later. It was like the air itself was remembering him. Other witnesses report seeing movement among the rides when the grounds are empty. A silhouette crossing the midway. A shadow leaning against a ticket booth. And always, that whistle, a sound that rises and falls in a steady rhythm, echoing through the darkness. One paranormal team from Akron spent a weekend at the fairgrounds investigating the claims. They set up motion sensors and audio recorders near the Ferris wheel and the midway games. On their final night, just after 2 a.m., every sensor lit up simultaneously. When they reviewed the audio later, they found it 3 clear whistled notes, followed by a faint metallic creak, as though something heavy had shifted in the darkness. That same night, one of the team members claimed to see a figure at the far end of the fairgrounds, near the livestock barn. The man appeared solid, wearing old work clothes and a wide-brimmed hat, his hands in his pockets. But, as the investigator approached, the figure dissolved into mist. The next morning, they discovered that the spot where the figure had stood marked the area where Henry Dorsey's body had landed in 1938. Locals have since woven the Whistling Man into the fair's folklore. Teenagers dare each other to stay behind after the ride shut down, waiting to hear the tune. Some claim that if you whistle the same 3 notes back, the sound will answer you closer each time. Others say that doing so is an invitation, a way of calling him toward you. A few who tried it swear they felt a cold hand brush their shoulder or heard faint footsteps behind them, crunching in the gravel. During setup week each summer, workers continue to report strange happenings. Tools go missing, only to reappear neatly laid out beside the Ferris wheel. A worker once claimed his wrench rolled across the floor by itself. Lights flicker in the midway even when power to the rides is cut off. Some say the air grows heavier near the Ferris wheel's base, as if charged with static or unseen presence. Despite the unease, the Portage County Fair remains a cherished tradition. Families gather each August, unaware, perhaps unwilling to acknowledge the spectral guest who may still roam among them. On warm nights when the fair is in full swing, the wind sometimes carries a tune faintly between the tents. People turn, searching for the source, and smile when they see no one there, thinking it's just part of the music. But the old-timers know better. They say Henry Dorsey never left the fairgrounds, that his spirit lingers, drawn by the sound of laughter and the turning wheel he once loved. The whistle, they believe, is not meant to scare. It's a worker's habit, carried into eternity. Yet there's something undeniably unsettling about it. Too, because it reminds everyone that joy and tragedy often share the same space. When the lights go out at the Gallia County Fairgrounds in Gallipolis, Ohio, a strange kind of stillness settles over the land, a stillness that hums with memory. The fairgrounds, nestled near the rolling Ohio River, have been the heart of the community for over a century. Every summer, families gather for rides, games, livestock shows, and the smell of funnel cakes drifting through the air. But when the crowds leave and the laughter fades, something else lingers. It starts with faint giggles carried on the night breeze, the distant creak of a Ferris wheel that hasn't turned in hours, and the echo of carnival music playing softly where no speakers hum. Locals have long whispered that the Gallia County Fairgrounds are alive not with the living, but with echoes of the past. Some say the energy of decades of joy, fear, and excitement has soaked into the soil, replaying itself like a broken record in time. Others insist that the sounds belong not to memory, but to spirit souls who never left the fair that once defined their happiest days. The first strange reports date back to the 1920s, when the fair was still a modest affair of tents, wooden rides, and horse-drawn carriages. After the gates closed one night, a caretaker named Amos Ridley claimed to hear children laughing and running through the empty midway. He followed the sounds, thinking a few kids had snuck back in. But when he reached the Ferris wheel, he found it standing still and silent in the moonlight. The laughter faded into the wind, leaving him alone in the dark. Amos wasn't the last to hear it. Over the decades, countless night workers and security guards have described similar encounters: laughter that seems to come from nowhere, or music that fades the moment you draw near. One modern groundskeeper, Tony Marshall, said he once heard an old-fashioned calliope tune drifting from the livestock barn at midnight. It sounded like it was coming from a carousel, he said, but we haven't had one of those in years. When he went inside to check, he found only hay bales, empty stalls, and a sudden biting chill in the air. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to the fairgrounds in recent years, intrigued by the consistent reports of disembodied sounds. In 2014, a team from Charleston, West Virginia, conducted an overnight investigation, setting up motion sensors and EVP recorders near the grandstand. Around 2:30 a.m., the recorders captured faint music, slow, old-fashioned, like something played on a carousel organ. Just as it grew louder, a burst of children's laughter filled the recording, followed by silence. The instruments weren't playing. The power was off, and the air around the investigators had grown inexplicably cold. The phenomenon has been called residual energy by some. A haunting that doesn't involve spirits with intent or emotion, but rather the replaying of an energetic imprint left behind by powerful moments. If that's true, then the Gallia County Fairgrounds have absorbed over a century's worth of excitement, joy, and heartbreak. The sound of cheering crowds, the cries of animals, the music of carnival rides, all echo faintly through time. But not everyone believes the laughter is just a memory. A few old-timers recall a tragic event that may have seeded something deeper. In the late 1930s, A small fire broke out in the fair's children's area. The flames spread quickly through the wooden booths and hay bales, and though no lives were officially recorded as lost, rumor persists that a young girl named Clara disappeared that night. Some say she was last seen near the merry-go-round, clutching a red balloon. To this day, people report seeing a flicker of movement near the spot where the carousel once stood, a small shape darting between the shadows, accompanied by the faint squeak of a spinning ride. One woman, walking her dog past the fairgrounds after hours, claimed she saw a balloon drifting through the air, glowing faintly under the moonlight. When it vanished, she heard a soft giggle right behind her ear. Another local, a former fair volunteer named Harold Briggs, spoke of hearing footsteps running circles around the rides one night during teardown. It was the strangest thing, he said. The kids had gone home hours ago, but I could hear little feet pattering on the gravel, like they were playing tag. Then the carousel music started just for a second and everything went quiet. Many who visit the fairgrounds at night describe the same uneasy feeling, the sense of being watched, of unseen eyes following them from the shadows. Sometimes, it's accompanied by the faint smell of cotton candy and popcorn. Even when the concession stands are shuttered and the grounds are empty, the scent lingers in the cool air, mingling with the earthy smell of grass and soil, as if the fair never truly ends. Some paranormal researchers theorize that places of intense emotion, especially joy mixed with tragedy, can retain a kind of psychic echo. The Gallia County Fairgrounds, with its century of laughter, thrill, and fleeting moments, might be one of those places. Every laugh, every cheer, every scream from the rides could have imprinted itself in the air, looping endlessly, like an old record spinning without a needle. Skeptics, of course, dismiss the stories as imagination. They point to sound reflections from nearby houses, the hum of the river, or even insects producing tones that mimic music. But even the most skeptical locals admit there's something strange about the fairgrounds at night. The silence feels heavy, and sometimes, in that silence, a soft, distant melody begins to play, one that shouldn't exist anymore. Today, during Fair Week, the Gallia County Fairgrounds bursts with life again. Families fill the bleachers, the lights flash, and the sound of carnival games drowns out any whisper of the past. But when the rides stop spinning and the last visitors drift away, that's when the fair's other guests emerge. Security guards sometimes hear faint applause coming from the grandstand after midnight. A janitor sweeping up debris near the food court once caught a child's laughter on his phone recording, though no one was around. The Scioto County Fairgrounds in Lucasville, Ohio, sit quietly amid rolling fields, hosting the familiar sounds of summer fairs, livestock shows, and the laughter of children. But beneath the cheerful atmosphere lies a shadowed past. The land was once the site of a Civil War encampment, where soldiers trained, drilled, and prepared for battles far from home. Some say the echoes of that time never left, lingering in the soil, the barns, and along the fairgrounds' dusty pathways. Visitors and workers alike have reported experiences that suggest these soldiers, long gone from the living world, may still walk the grounds in spectral form. The earliest tales date back decades. Local farmers recalled seeing figures dressed in gray uniforms along the edge of the fairgrounds during late-night cleanup after events. At first, they assumed it was pranksters or traveling reenactors arriving early for a show, but the descriptions never changed. The men were always pale, expressionless, standing rigidly near the stables or along the tree line, and when anyone approached, they would vanish without a trace. The sightings were unnerving, yet they became an accepted, though whispered, part of life around the fairgrounds. One veteran fair employee, Thomas Caldwell, shared his story of encountering the soldiers during a particularly quiet night. He had stayed behind after a livestock exhibition to finish cleaning the pens. The barns were empty, and only the soft whistle of the wind carried across the fields. As he worked near the edge of the stables, he saw them, a small group of men in gray, moving slowly, methodically, as though inspecting the grounds. Their faces were colorless and expressionless, their movements stiff and deliberate. Thomas froze, unsure whether to speak. When he took a cautious step toward them, They dissolved into the night air, leaving only the scent of damp earth and hay. Other employees have reported similar experiences. Lights flicker along the barns for no reason. Doors creak open and shut when no one is around. And the sound of boots crunching on gravel is sometimes heard when the fairgrounds are deserted. One caretaker even claimed he heard the distant sound of commands being shouted, soldiers marching in formation on empty fields. Though nothing appeared when he ran toward the noise, paranormal investigators have visited the fairgrounds, drawn by the consistent accounts of Civil War apparitions. Using thermal imaging cameras and EVP recorders, they captured unusual readings in the areas most frequently reported. During one investigation, a camera picked up the vague shape of a man in uniform standing near the stables. When the investigator approached, the figure vanished, leaving only a cold draft in its place. Audio recordings from the same night revealed a faint murmur of voices giving orders, interspersed with the soft rhythm of marching feet. The sounds were subtle, almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable to those familiar with military drills. The phenomenon is often attributed to residual energy, the idea that the intense emotions and activity of the soldiers left an imprint on the land. The drills, the long hours of preparation, the fear of battle, and the camaraderie, all of it, may have been absorbed into the fairgrounds themselves, replaying under certain conditions. Thunderstorms, fog, and late-night quiet seem to amplify these energies, making the apparitions more visible and the sounds more distinct. Some locals, however, believe the spirits are not merely residual echoes but conscious entities. They suggest that these soldiers may be tied to the land, unable or unwilling to leave. Perhaps they linger because the fairgrounds now occupy a place once filled with structure, purpose, and discipline qualities that resonate with them, even in death. During particularly quiet nights, when only the wind moves across the fields, some have reported a sense of being observed, as if unseen eyes follow every movement. The feeling is unnerving but not necessarily hostile. One night in late September, a security guard named Linda Harper stayed behind after a small festival. She had walked a perimeter to check the livestock barns and noticed shadows moving against the moonlight. At first, she assumed it was stray animals, but then she saw them clearly. Two men in gray uniforms standing side by side near a fence. Their faces were blank, pale, and their eyes seemed hollow. Linda whispered a greeting, and they both turned slowly toward her, then disappeared as suddenly as they had appeared. The memory of their silent gaze stayed with her for years, haunting her sleep. Even fairgoers have reported unexplainable experiences. Families walking the grounds during early morning setup sometimes notice figures standing motionless near the edges of the fair, disappearing when approached. Children playing near the old stables have described seeing men in old-fashioned gray clothing watching them silently. No one has reported harm, but the encounters leave a chill and a sense of being in the presence of something older than the fair itself. The history of the land itself adds weight to these encounters. During the Civil War, the encampment trained hundreds of soldiers, many of whom left for battle and never returned. The fairgrounds, location near hills, forests, and open fields, was strategic, and the soldiers spent countless hours drilling, marching, and living in tents on the very soil that visitors now walk upon. It is this combination of history and energy that may explain why the fairgrounds are a hotspot for supernatural activity. Despite the eerie stories, life continues at the Scioto County Fairgrounds. Summer fairs draw crowds for livestock exhibitions, rides, and games. The shadows of the past are largely unnoticed by the excited families, and the laughter of children mixes with the echoes of history in ways that few can perceive. But after the crowds leave, when the night grows still and the barns stand empty, the fairgrounds take on a different character. The Adams County Fairgrounds in West Union, Ohio, have been a center of community gatherings for over a century. Every summer, families flock to the grounds for horse races, livestock shows, carnival rides, and the smell of popcorn drifting across the fairway. The laughter, excitement, and energy of the crowds define the fairgrounds during the day. But as darkness falls and the crowds disperse, the grounds take on a different character, one steeped in history and shadow. Among the local legends, None is more chilling than the tale of the woman in black, a spectral figure said to haunt the horse track long after midnight. The story begins in 1907, a year etched in tragedy in the history of the Adams County Fairgrounds. On the day of the summer horse races, a young rider named Samuel Whitaker, known for his skill and ambition, met with a fatal accident. During a particularly tense race, his horse stumbled near the final turn, throwing him to the ground and trampling him beneath hooves in front of a stunned crowd. Samuel was pronounced dead at the scene, leaving behind a devastated widow, Margaret, who was said to be the soul of elegance and dignity, always dressed in black. Heartbroken, she continued to attend the races for years, walking the horse track after each event. Her presence, a somber reminder of the tragedy. After Margaret's passing, locals began reporting sightings of a woman in a long black dress walking the horse track at night. Those who have seen her describe a graceful figure, moving slowly and deliberately along the same path where the races once thrilled crowds. She appears most often just after midnight, when the fairgrounds are deserted and the moon casts silver light across the grass and dirt track. Some witnesses say she pauses occasionally, turning her gaze toward the empty bleachers, as if expecting an audience, before fading silently into the darkness. Several accounts describe a sensation of being observed when the woman appears. One fairgrounds caretaker, Richard Collins, recounted a night when he stayed behind after a livestock exhibition. He had been sweeping debris near the horse track when he noticed a figure in the distance, gliding along the edge of the track. "At first, I thought it was a trick of the shadows," he said. "But then she stopped, looked straight at the bleachers, and I could feel her presence, heavy and sad, like the weight of 100 forgotten memories. And then she was gone, just vanished, as if stepping into another time." Other witnesses have shared similar experiences. A teenage volunteer, tasked with cleaning the track after a late-night event, reported feeling a sudden chill, followed by the sound of soft, deliberate footsteps behind her. When she turned, she saw a woman in black, moving with elegance along the curve of the track. Despite her fear, the figure made no aggressive move, only continued her slow, measured walk before disappearing at the far end. The volunteer described the experience as haunting, yet oddly peaceful, like witnessing a memory replaying itself in the present. Paranormal investigators have visited the Adams County Fairgrounds numerous times to document these encounters, using infrared cameras and EVP, electronic voice phenomena recorders. They have captured unusual phenomena near the horse track after midnight. On several occasions, the cameras picked up a shadowy, human-shaped figure gliding along the track, disappearing when approached. The EVP recordings occasionally reveal a soft sigh or the faint rustle of a dress, sounds that cannot be explained by wind, animals, or nearby traffic. Investigators theorize that the woman in black may be a residual spirit, replaying her grief and longing for a time long past. The energy of the fairgrounds itself may play a role in these hauntings. The horse track, once filled with the pounding of hooves and the roar of excited crowds, retains a connection to intense human emotions. Joy, anticipation, heartbreak, and tragedy are all concentrated in that narrow oval of dirt and grass. Some suggest that Margaret's grief was so profound that it became imprinted on the land, replaying night after night for those sensitive to the echoes of the past. Skeptics argued that the sightings are simply tricks of the light or overactive imaginations fueled by the fairgrounds' long history. Fog rolling across the track, shadows cast by the bleachers, and rustling trees could easily create illusions in the darkness. Yet even those who claim disbelief often report an uneasy sensation when walking the track at night, a feeling that someone is watching, a presence hovering just beyond perception. In addition to her appearances, some visitors report subtle signs of her presence. A chair left on the bleachers may be found shifted the next morning. Footprints appear in the dirt along the track, only to vanish upon closer inspection. Occasionally, a soft draft is felt along the path, brushing the skin like the fabric of a dress passing close. These signs, while small, reinforce the stories of those who have witnessed the figure firsthand. Despite the chilling tales, the woman in black has never been described as malicious. Those who encounter her feel sorrow, a lingering sense of loss, but not danger. Some locals even leave small tributes along the track, such as flowers or ribbons, as a gesture of remembrance. It is believed that the figure embodies Margaret's enduring love and grief, a spirit tethered to the place where her life was forever changed. Even today, the Adams County Fairgrounds continue to operate, hosting horse races, livestock shows, and seasonal fairs. By day, the atmosphere is vibrant and cheerful, the memories of the past buried beneath laughter and music. But after dark, when the crowds have gone and the track lies empty, the woman in black may appear walking the same path she once did. In life, her presence, a bridge between the present and a moment in 1907 that cannot be forgotten. The Butler County Fairgrounds in Hamilton, Ohio, have long been a central gathering place for the community, a site of laughter, music, livestock shows, and carnival rides. But beneath the lively atmosphere lies a tragic history that refuses to stay buried. In the early 1900s, a devastating fire swept through the fairgrounds, consuming several show barns and leaving a mark on the land that persists to this day. Though the grounds were restored and rebuilt, locals and fair workers have long reported strange phenomena that suggest the fire left behind more than just ashes. It left lingering spirits, echoes of trauma, and a presence that continues to haunt the fairgrounds. The original fire occurred on a sweltering summer afternoon during one of the busiest fairs of the era. Wooden show barns, packed with animals and equipment, ignited quickly, and flames spread before firefighters could arrive. The chaos left several animals dead and at least one human casualty, though records from the time are incomplete. Survivors spoke of frantic screams, the smell of burning hay, and the intense heat that seemed to consume everything. The site was eventually rebuilt, but the memory of that day lingered in the minds of the town's residents. Even after decades, workers at the fairgrounds began noticing strange occurrences around the rebuilt barns. Early morning caretakers reported hearing faint, panicked screams that seemed to come from the old show barns, even though no one else was nearby. The sounds were often accompanied by an icy draft, inexplicable in the humid Ohio summers. One longtime employee, Robert Jenkins, recalled entering the largest barn shortly after sunset and hearing what he described as a chorus of frightened voices, calling for help, echoing off the wooden walls. Despite searching the entire structure, he found nothing, no animals, no equipment, no people, yet the feeling of urgent fear lingered in the air long after the sound ceased. Horses seemed to sense the lingering energy of the fire. Trainers and caretakers have repeatedly reported animals refusing to enter certain stalls, pulling back nervously, ears pinned, hooves stamping as if responding to some invisible force. One caretaker, Martha Lytle, explained, "We've had horses that otherwise are calm, completely panic in the middle barn. They will not step inside, no matter how much we coax them. It's almost as if they can sense something that we cannot." Attempts to renovate or move these animals often fail, as the reactions are consistent over decades, suggesting the barn itself carries the imprint of trauma. Even the human staff sometimes encounter physical evidence of the fire's lasting presence. On freshly painted walls, faint burn marks have been reported appearing overnight. Tiny black scars where paint should be smoothed. Groundskeepers have found scorch-like marks on wooden beams or doors without explanation, as if the fire itself has decided to reassert its presence. Some employees speculate that the materials of the original barns absorbed the intense energy of the fire and tragedy, releasing it sporadically under certain conditions. Paranormal investigators have taken a keen interest in Butler County Fairgrounds because of these persistent phenomena. Using EVP recorders, infrared cameras, and motion sensors, teams have documented strange activity, especially around the old barns. On one investigation, a camera caught a fleeting figure, blurred and blackened, moving across the empty floor of the livestock barn. Audio recorders captured soft but distinct cries and the faint clatter of hooves. Though no animals were present, investigators suggest that the site may host residual energy, a replay of the panic and horror from that fateful day, echoing through time and space. Witnesses consistently report that the presence is not actively malevolent, yet the sensations are deeply unsettling. caretakers feel watched as they move through the barns, and many describe a heaviness in the air, a weight of sadness and fear that seems almost tangible. Some visitors have even reported fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures near burned or damaged areas, as though the victims of the fire are still wandering the spaces they once occupied. The legend of the fire also includes a tale of a single young boy, believed to be a stable helper, who perished in the flames. Locals claim that his spirit, frightened and confused, sometimes manifests near the remnants of the barns. He is said to appear as a small, shadowy figure darting across the floorboards, vanishing when approached. Witnesses say they can feel his fear, a lingering panic that mirrors the horror of that day. The combination of the boy's lingering presence and the cries of unseen animals creates a uniquely eerie environment, blending grief, tragedy, and unresolved history. Despite the haunting, the fairgrounds continue to host events each year. Summer fairs bring music, games, and crowds that fill the space with energy, laughter, and life. By day, the past seems almost forgotten, buried beneath the festivities. But as night falls, and the fairgoers leave, the barns and the surrounding grounds take on a different character. Cold drafts creep across the floor, shadows seem to lengthen unnaturally, and sometimes distant cries echo through the empty fields. For those who have stayed late after the crowds, the Butler County Fairgrounds can feel like stepping into a thin veil between past and present. The burned barns are silent witnesses to the tragedy of the early 1900s, yet they speak in subtle, terrifying ways. The cries, the footsteps, the shadowy figures, the refusals of animals to enter certain stalls, and the inexplicable burn marks all suggest that the fire's energy never fully dissipated. It lingers, woven into the very fabric of the land, waiting to be acknowledged by those willing to see, hear, or feel it. The Wayne County Fairgrounds in Wooster, Ohio, are a familiar and cherished sight for families, carnival goers, and fair enthusiasts. Every year, the grounds host rides, games, livestock exhibitions, and colorful attractions that draw visitors from across the region. Among the most popular features is the Mirror Maze, a dazzling labyrinth of reflective surfaces, bright lights, and clever angles designed to entertain and occasionally disorient. By day, the maze is all fun and laughter, children darting through corridors, families laughing at the optical illusions, and carnival music echoing through the attraction. But as the sun sets and the crowds leave, the Wayne County Fairgrounds reveal a darker side, one that has long been whispered about by vendors, staff, and paranormal enthusiasts. The Mirror Maze, in particular, has become the focal point of eerie tales. Carnival workers, who are often among the first to set up and last to leave, report seeing figures appear in the mirrors that do not correspond to anyone in the maze. These reflections sometimes linger after the person has stepped away, remaining behind like an echo of movement, frozen in time. One worker, speaking on condition of anonymity, recounted a chilling encounter during a late-night cleanup. "I walked through the maze, checking that all the mirrors were secure," she said, "and I saw a man standing near one of the corners. But when I turned to look directly at him, there was no one there." The reflection stayed for a full minute before disappearing. She described a sense of unease, as if being observed by someone or something that existed outside the ordinary flow of time. The experiences are not limited to visual anomalies. Several workers report feeling cold drafts, even on warm summer nights, when passing certain sections of the Mirror Maze. Objects, particularly small props and lightweight decorations, have been found moved or knocked over without explanation. Lights flicker sporadically, and electrical panels sometimes register short surges when no maintenance work is being performed. These phenomena, subtle but consistent, suggest the presence of an unseen force tied specifically to the attraction. Paranormal investigators have taken a particular interest in the Mirror Maze, using EMF detectors, thermal cameras, and digital recorders. They have documented unusual activity concentrated around the funhouse. EMF readings fluctuate wildly in certain corners, sometimes spiking as high as those recorded in traditionally haunted buildings. Thermal cameras occasionally pick up ghostly outlines that seem to move independently of any human presence. Audio equipment has captured faint whispers, soft footsteps, and the sound of someone brushing past the mirrors, even when the area is completely empty. One investigator, Michael Torres, described an evening spent alone in the maze after hours. "I walked slowly through the corridors, observing the mirrors," he said. "At first, everything seemed normal, but then I noticed a shadow moving across one of the mirrored walls, a figure that didn't match my own reflection. I turned quickly, expecting to see someone hiding, but there was no one. The shadow remained for several seconds before vanishing entirely. The EMF readings were off the charts in that corner, and the temperature dropped noticeably. It was as if the attraction itself was holding on to some kind of energy." Local legend has attempted to explain these occurrences. Some say the mirror maze amplifies residual energy memories, emotions, or spiritual imprints from past visitors that never fully dissipated. Others suggest that the reflective surfaces themselves act as a conduit, a way for spirits to interact with the living world. The way mirrors multiply and distort reflections could theoretically allow energy trapped in the area to manifest in ways that appear tangible yet fleeting. For carnival vendors, these theories resonate with personal experience. Many recount hearing voices echoing faintly through the maze, laughter or murmurs that cannot be explained, and seeing silhouettes that appear in the mirrors but nowhere else. One memorable account came from a longtime carnival operator named Henry Whitaker. He had been setting up the mirror maze for years and considered himself immune to ghost stories. One night, after the fair had closed, he noticed a small figure standing near the entrance, a young girl wearing a dress that seemed out of place in modern times. When he approached, she vanished, but her reflection remained in the mirrors. Henry described a shiver running down his spine, a feeling that the child was aware of him, even in her absence. He later learned that a girl had disappeared near the Fairgrounds decades ago, though her fate was never discovered. Others have reported being followed by reflections that do not correspond to their movements. A visitor may turn a corner, only to find a figure frozen in a mirror that should be empty. When approached, the figure disappears, only to reappear in another reflection seconds later. The phenomenon is subtle, yet profoundly unsettling, creating a sense that the mirrors themselves are alive, holding fragments of past moments, memories, or spirits that cannot move on. The aura of mystery surrounding the Wayne County Fairgrounds is compounded by the fact that these encounters rarely occur during the day. Crowds, ambient noise, and activity seem to suppress the manifestations. It is only in the quiet hours, after the fair has emptied, that the anomalies reveal themselves. Employees cleaning up, security guards making rounds, or paranormal investigators conducting late-night surveys are the most frequent witnesses, suggesting that stillness and focus may create the conditions necessary for the energy to become perceptible. Despite the eerie reports, the mirror maze remains a popular attraction during the fair. Families continue to wander its corridors, enjoying the disorienting reflections and optical illusions, unaware or perhaps unconcerned about the spirits that may linger within. The tales are often shared in whispers between carnival staff, a blend of cautionary story and local folklore, adding an extra thrill to the attraction. The Trumbull County Fairgrounds in Cortland, Ohio, have long been a site of community gatherings, laughter, and the excitement of fairs. Every summer, families flock to the grounds for rides, games, livestock shows, and the aroma of popcorn and funnel cakes drifting across the air. By day, the fairgrounds are alive with color, music, and cheer. But beneath this vibrant surface lies a tragic history that has left a lingering mark on the land. A story of loss and lingering spirits that continues to haunt the fairgrounds even decades later. The most infamous incident in the fairgrounds' history occurred during a night fair in 1952. That evening, the grounds were crowded with families eager to enjoy the rides and attractions. The centerpiece of the fair was a large, mechanical ride that had been recently installed, a modern marvel of gears, pulleys, and rotating arms that promised thrills to anyone brave enough to climb aboard. But as the night wore on, disaster struck. Witnesses recount that the ride suddenly malfunctioned, jerking violently and sending several attendees hurtling from their seats. Panic spread through the crowd as the ride continued to grind and groan, its mechanical arms thrashing uncontrollably. Several people were killed that night, and many others were injured. The scene was chaotic. Screams, shouts, and the grinding of metal filled the air, leaving an indelible imprint on everyone who witnessed it. In the aftermath, the ride was removed and the fairgrounds rebuilt. But locals say the energy of that horrific night never truly left. For decades, fairgoers, employees, and late-night visitors have reported hearing faint echoes of that fateful event. Some claim that on quiet nights, the sound of grinding gears can be heard coming from where the ride once stood, accompanied by the faint, terrified screams of the victims. It is as if the machinery, memory, and anguish have been woven into the fabric of the grounds, replaying the moment over and over for anyone sensitive enough to notice. Fair workers and caretakers are among the most frequent witnesses. Longtime employee Joseph Allen recalls his first encounter as a teenager working the night fair. "I was closing up one of the midway booths around midnight when I heard it," he said. "The grinding of metal, like a ride struggling to move, followed by the faintest screams. I froze. I knew the ride had been gone for years, but the sound was so real. It was as if the fairgrounds themselves were replaying that night." Other employees have reported similar experiences: footsteps echoing in empty spaces, the clatter of mechanical parts where none exist, and sudden chills that sweep across the midway, leaving a sense of unease. Visitors, too, have reported unsettling experiences. Some describe standing in the middle of the fairgrounds at night and hearing a combination of grinding, screeching, and screaming, only for the sounds to fade when approached. Others have claimed to feel a presence brushing past them as they walk through areas associated with the old ride. Many describe a heavy atmosphere, a feeling of sorrow and fear hanging in the air, as if the fairgrounds themselves remember the tragedy. Paranormal teams have investigated the Trumbull County Fairgrounds on multiple occasions, using EMF detectors, audio recorders, and thermal cameras. They have captured evidence suggesting residual energy tied to the 1952 disaster. Some recordings include faint cries and indistinct voices in areas long since cleared of any rides or equipment. EMF spikes have been noted in patterns that appear to follow the perimeter of where the ride once stood. Thermal cameras occasionally reveal fleeting shapes, blurred and indistinct, moving across empty grounds. Investigators theorized that the intense fear and trauma of the night may have imprinted itself on the land, creating a form of residual haunting that repeats under certain conditions. Local legend has helped perpetuate the story. Parents warn children not to wander the fairgrounds after dark, telling them the spirits of those lost in the 1952 accident still linger. Tales circulate of phantom screams carried on the wind, and some claim to have glimpsed shadowy figures moving near the empty ride area. The phenomenon is described not as aggressive but as haunting, a replay of past fear and tragedy rather than a deliberate attempt to frighten. The psychological effect on the community has been profound. Even decades later, the fairgrounds carry an air of caution and reverence after dark. Veterans of the 1952 fair recount the horror of that night with vivid clarity, describing the chaos and panic that unfolded. Their stories, passed down to younger generations, have become intertwined with eyewitness accounts of ghostly activity, reinforcing the idea that some events leave permanent echoes in the places they occurred. The Trumbull County Fairgrounds continue to host seasonal fairs, livestock shows, and carnival rides. During the day, the site is full of laughter and energy, the past hidden beneath the vibrancy of music, games, and food. But at night, when the crowds disperse and the fairgrounds fall silent, the atmosphere changes. The wind carries a chill, shadows deepen along the midway, and the faint grinding of gears can sometimes be heard, accompanied by the distant echoes of screams from a night that should have been forgotten. The Ashtabula County Fairgrounds in Jefferson, Ohio, have long been a hub for community events, livestock exhibitions, and traveling fairs. By day, the grounds are alive with laughter, music, and the colorful chaos of rides and booths. But beneath the festive atmosphere lies a history shrouded in mystery. one that has persisted for over a century. The Fairgrounds are widely regarded as one of Ohio's eeriest sites, a place where stories of vanished performers and ghostly apparitions continue to captivate and unsettle those who venture there after dark. The origins of the Fairgrounds' haunted reputation date back to the late 1800s. During the era of traveling sideshows and carnivals, it was a time when performers, jugglers, and novelty acts crisscrossed the country, offering feats of daring and the strange wonders of the human imagination. One sideshow, in particular, became infamous not for its acts, but for a mysterious disappearance. According to local accounts, a tall, thin sideshow worker vanished without a trace during a fair in Jefferson. He was said to have been responsible for promoting the show's centerpiece, a banner proclaiming, "See the strangest man alive." Witnesses later recalled seeing him pacing the racetrack late at night, carrying the tattered banner, but when anyone approached, he would vanish into the shadows. The disappearance sparked rumors and speculation. Some believed the man had fled for unknown reasons. Others suggested foul play, a carnival mystery lost to time. Whatever the truth, the story became part of the Fairgrounds folklore, whispered among locals and passed down through generations. Over the decades, visitors and workers alike have reported strange sightings that seem to echo that original tale. In recent years, those venturing onto the Fairgrounds after dark have recounted encounters with a tall, thin figure walking along the racetrack. Descriptions are remarkably consistent. The figure carries a tattered banner, worn and faded, still proclaiming, "See the strangest man alive." Witnesses say he moves slowly, deliberately, and seems entirely unaware of their presence. When approached, the figure disappears, leaving behind only the rustling of the banner and the echo of footsteps on the track. One longtime caretaker, Samuel Green, shared his experiences during late-night maintenance rounds. "I was walking the perimeter of the racetrack after setting up for a small event," he recalled. "Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a tall man pacing near the track. At first, I thought it was a performer or a prankster, but as I got closer, he didn't react. I called out, and he just vanished. The banner was still visible in my mind, torn and faded. Reading 'See the strangest man alive,' I couldn't find him anywhere, and there was no one around. It gave me chills I've never forgotten." Others have reported hearing the faint flapping of the banner even when no wind blows. Some claim to see movement in the racetrack lights, shadows stretching and bending unnaturally, as if something is pacing just out of reach. Photographers attempting to capture the scene have sometimes found inexplicable anomalies. Blurred figures, dark silhouettes, or streaks of light that seem to correspond to the apparition's path. Paranormal investigators note that these occurrences are concentrated around the old racetrack, the area tied most closely to the sideshow worker's original disappearance. Investigators have also documented unusual readings with EMF meters and thermal cameras. Spikes in electromagnetic activity appear in patterns that follow the path of the racetrack, while thermal imagery occasionally captures fleeting heat signatures resembling the thin figure described by witnesses. Audio equipment has picked up faint whispers and low, mournful groans that seem to float across the track. Many theorize that the tragic and mysterious circumstances of the disappearance left a residual energy, an imprint of a life interrupted and unresolved, replaying itself under specific conditions. The figure is almost always reported after dark, when the fairgrounds are quiet and shadows lengthen along the track. Crowds, music, and carnival lights seem to suppress the apparition, suggesting that stillness and solitude create the perfect conditions for the entity to manifest. Locals have taken to warning nighttime visitors to avoid the racetrack, both out of caution and respect for the long-dead sideshow performer who seems tied eternally to the grounds. Interestingly, there is no evidence that the apparition is harmful. Those who have seen the figure often describe a sense of sadness or longing rather than aggression. It is as if the man continues to walk the racetrack, tethered to the banner and the memory of a life interrupted. A ghostly reminder of a century-old mystery that has yet to find resolution. The banner itself, torn and faded, is described as almost vibrating with energy, as though it carries the emotions of the man and the crowds who once flocked to see the strangest man alive. Over time, the story has woven itself into the identity of the Ashtabula County Fairgrounds. Seasonal visitors may come for rides, games, and exhibits, unaware of the dark history that lingers after sunset. But for those who remain late, who wander past the livestock pens, the midway, and finally, the old racetrack, the fairgrounds become a place where past and present blur. Shadows stretch longer than they should. The sound of flapping fabric carries in the still air, and the tall, thin figure may appear, pacing the track with a banner that refuses to fade, reminding observers that some stories are never truly forgotten. The Knox County Fairgrounds, in Mount Vernon, Ohio, have long been a centerpiece of local culture, hosting annual fairs, livestock exhibitions, carnival rides, and family-friendly events. By day, the grounds are vibrant with color, music, and laughter, the aroma of popcorn and fried treats mingling with the sounds of chatter and carnival games. Children run across the midway with sticky hands and smiling faces, while families linger near the animal pens and craft displays. But as the sun dips below the horizon and the fairgrounds quiet down, a different atmosphere emerges, a subtle, chilling presence that has been reported by caretakers, workers, and late-night visitors for nearly a century. Among the most persistent tales is that of a spectral child who appears near the old ticket booth. She is usually seen wandering close to the gate, moving slowly and deliberately, as if searching for someone or something. Just as observers gather the courage to approach, the girl disappears, vanishing into thin air before she reaches the exit. Her appearance is described as almost translucent, yet her presence is palpable, leaving behind a chill that lingers long after she is gone. The legend of the spectral child is often tied to a tragic event during the 1923 Knox County Fair. According to historical accounts and local lore, a young girl attending the fair that year wandered away from her family. Despite exhaustive searches and community efforts, she was never found. Some say she became lost in the maze of booths and carnival rides, while others believe more sinister explanations were at play. Whatever the truth, the memory of her disappearance has been preserved in the collective consciousness of the community, manifesting as sightings of her ghost nearly a century later. Caretakers and staff are the most frequent witnesses. Many report feeling a sudden chill near the ticket booth late at night, accompanied by the faint sound of a child's laughter or the soft tapping of bare feet on the pavement. One longtime caretaker, Martha Jenkins, recounted an experience she had while locking up the grounds after a summer event. She looked so real for a moment, but when I stepped closer, she just vanished. The balloon floated for a second before disappearing too. I couldn't find her anywhere, and I was the only one on the grounds. It was like she was waiting for something or someone. Visitors have also reported encounters, though they are usually fleeting and unsettling. Some describe catching glimpses of a small figure moving behind the ticket booth or near the main gate, only to find nothing upon inspection. Others have felt an inexplicable sense of being watched, a presence that follows them even as they walk across empty pathways. The combination of visual and sensory experiences creates a haunting impression, one that lingers in the mind long after leaving the fairgrounds. Paranormal investigators have shown particular interest in the Knox County Fairgrounds, focusing their attention on the ticket booth and surrounding areas. Using EMF detectors, thermal cameras, and digital audio recorders, they have captured anomalies consistent with a lingering residual presence. EMF readings often spike near the booth, while thermal imagery occasionally reveals fleeting shapes resembling a small child. Audio recordings sometimes pick up faint giggles, whispers, and the sound of footsteps that cannot be attributed to any living person. Many investigators theorize that the traumatic energy surrounding the 1923 disappearance left an imprint on the fairgrounds, allowing the child's spirit to manifest repeatedly under certain conditions. Locals have speculated on the nature of the apparition. Some believe the girl is trapped in a loop, eternally retracing the last moments of her life in search of her family or the safety she never found. Others think she may be drawn to the fairgrounds by the energy of subsequent events, the laughter of children, the movement of families, and the celebrations that continue each year. Her balloon, consistently described as red or pale in color, may symbolize the fleeting joy and innocence that was stolen from her too soon, a tangible reminder of her unresolved presence. Eyewitness accounts often include a feeling of profound sadness. Those who have seen the girl describe an emotional weight that lingers after she disappears, a sorrow that is palpable even to those who do not typically believe in the paranormal. The experiences are rarely frightening in a violent sense. Instead, they evoke empathy, melancholy, and the sense that the fairgrounds themselves remember the tragedy of 1923. Over time, the story of the barefoot girl with the balloon has become part of the identity of the Knox County Fairgrounds. Staff members warn newcomers to the grounds about the apparition, not as a tale to scare, but as a lesson in the history and memory embedded in the land. Visitors may encounter her, or they may not, but the legend persists, passed down through generations as both cautionary tale and spectral memory. The fairgrounds themselves continue to host annual events, welcoming crowds of families, children, and fair enthusiasts. By day, the grounds are full of vibrant energy, laughter, and the smell of cotton candy, leaving little room for reflection on the past. But when the lights dim and the last visitors depart, the ticket booth and nearby pathways become a place where history and the present intertwine. She walks silently, balloon in hand, forever pacing near the gate, searching for something lost long ago. The Miami County Fairgrounds in Troy, Ohio, have long been a gathering place for community events, livestock exhibitions, and seasonal fairs. By day, the fairgrounds are alive with the sights and sounds of laughter, carnival rides, and the smell of fried food drifting through the air. Families stroll along the midway, children dart between game booths, and the old exhibit halls serve as centers for competitions and displays, ranging from crafts to livestock. Yet beneath this cheerful exterior lies a history that is far more unsettling. Longtime workers and visitors report an eerie presence within the grounds, particularly in the old exhibit halls, where the air often turns inexplicably cold and the atmosphere seems charged with something unseen. The fairgrounds' reputation for paranormal activity has persisted for decades. Those familiar with the grounds recount that even during the height of summer, a chilling cold flows through the exhibit halls, as if someone or something were moving unseen among the wooden beams and glass display cases. Workers often describe the sensation of being brushed past by invisible figures, footsteps echoing on empty floors, and the feeling of being watched when no one else is present. It is this unusual combination of temperature fluctuations, unexplained sounds, and the sensation of presence that has made the Miami County Fairgrounds a site of intrigue for paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers alike. EVP, electronic voice phenomena. Sessions conducted within the exhibit halls have produced some of the most compelling evidence of the fairgrounds' haunted reputation. Investigators have repeatedly captured faint female voices, speaking in low, almost urgent tones. Phrases such as, "stay away" and "not yours" have been recorded, echoing faintly but distinctly through the empty halls. The messages seem directed, warning intruders, or perhaps guarding something hidden within the structure itself. These captured voices often appear during late-night sessions when the grounds are quiet, and investigators report a palpable tension in the air, as if the building itself is aware of their presence. Staff members have their own chilling encounters. One veteran caretaker, Helen Carter, described a routine evening when she was closing up the exhibit halls after a summer fair. "I was checking the last display cases when I suddenly felt a cold draft sweep past me," she recalled. "It was midsummer, so there shouldn't have been any reason for the temperature to drop. I turned around and saw nothing, but I felt as if someone had walked right through me. Then I heard a whisper, soft but clear, saying, 'Stay away.' I froze. The hairs on my arm stood up, and I couldn't move for several seconds." Carter's experience is far from unique. Multiple workers report similar incidents, often describing the cold spots, fleeting touches, and whispers that seem to echo from nowhere. Visitors occasionally report sensations of unease as well, particularly when exploring the fairgrounds after dark. Some describe the air growing heavy and damp as they pass through the exhibit halls. Others recount sudden chills and the sensation of being followed, even in empty spaces. Photographs taken at night sometimes reveal unexplained shadows or light anomalies. And audio recordings frequently capture soft, unintelligible murmurs that vanish when listeners attempt to interpret them. These phenomena have led many to believe that the fairgrounds are home to restless spirits, perhaps tied to past events or long-forgotten tragedies on the grounds. Local lore suggests that the spirits may be connected to a series of mysterious deaths and accidents dating back to the early 20th century, though documentation is scarce. Some speculate that women who once worked at the fairs or who were connected to early exhibits may have perished under unfortunate circumstances, leaving behind an imprint of energy that now manifests as the cold drafts, whispers, and moving shadows. The repeated warnings captured in EVPs, "Stay away" and "Not yours," seem to reinforce the idea that these spirits are protective of the grounds, ensuring that visitors respect their presence and the history they carry. Paranormal teams visiting the Miami County Fairgrounds often focus on the old exhibit halls, which appear to be the epicenter of the activity. EMF detectors frequently register spikes in areas where workers have reported cold spots, and thermal imaging sometimes reveals vague, human-shaped forms that appear and disappear without explanation. Investigators note that the activity is largely residual, a haunting that repeats past events rather than a conscious haunting attempting to harm visitors. Still, the emotional weight of the recordings and the inexplicable environmental changes create a strong sense of unease for anyone present. Despite the eerie reputation, the fairgrounds continue to host annual events and fairs, drawing families, vendors, and tourists. During the day, the energy of the crowds and the vibrancy of carnival rides seem to suppress the manifestations, making the activity largely undetectable. But when the sun sets and the grounds empty, the atmosphere shifts. The exhibit halls become a place where the past lingers, where the cold drafts and whispered warnings hint at stories untold, and where visitors may feel the presence of spirits who continue to guard the space. For those brave enough to explore the fairgrounds at night, the experience can be both chilling and fascinating. The cold that flows through the exhibit halls, the unseen footsteps, and the captured whispers all serve as a reminder that the Miami County Fairgrounds are more than a place of recreation. They are a repository of history, memory, and lingering energy. The spirits who inhabit the halls may not seek to harm, but they make their presence known in subtle, undeniable ways, leaving visitors with an unforgettable sense of the past, pressing into the present. The Mahoning County Fairgrounds in Canfield, Ohio, are steeped in history. Established over a century ago, these grounds have been home to one of the state's oldest and most cherished fairs, attracting families, farmers, and visitors from across the region. By day, the fairgrounds are a vibrant hub of activity. The smell of popcorn and funnel cakes drifts across the midway. Children dart between rides and game booths, and the air rings with laughter, music, and the rhythmic thud of hooves on the harness racing track. But beneath this lively surface lies a darker, more mysterious presence. For decades, caretakers, fairgoers, and paranormal enthusiasts have reported sightings and sounds that cannot be explained, giving the Mahoning County Fairgrounds a reputation as one of Ohio's most haunted event spaces. Among the most frequent accounts are phantom livestock sounds. Longtime workers often describe hearing the low, mournful mooing of cows or the braying of horses in areas that should be empty. Sometimes these sounds are accompanied by faint stamping or the jingle of harnesses, even when the barns and stables have long been vacated for the evening. One caretaker, George Whitman, recalled a chilling experience during a summer setup. "I was walking the perimeter near the old stables," he said, "and I heard hooves clattering across the track. At first, I thought the horses had escaped, but when I checked, the barns were empty. The sounds kept moving around the track, like a race was happening, and then, just as suddenly as it started, it vanished." These mysterious sounds are often paired with visual phenomena. Several witnesses have reported seeing ghostly harness racers galloping across the track in the dead of night. These figures are described as vaguely human shapes mounted on spectral horses, harnesses gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Observers say the racers maintain a fluid, natural motion, as if participating in a competition from another era. Just before the final turn, they vanish, dissolving into mist and leaving behind only the echo of hooves and the faint scent of leather and hay. Many believe these apparitions are echoes of past races, residual energy from the fairgrounds. Long history of harness racing events that were once central to its seasonal gatherings. Paranormal teams have been drawn to the fairgrounds to investigate these phenomena, using EMF detectors, infrared cameras, and digital audio recorders. They have documented a series of unusual events that appear concentrated around the track and stables. EMF spikes often occur along the path of the reported ghostly races, while thermal imaging occasionally captures fleeting, horse-shaped heat signatures, moving in patterns that mimic the descriptions provided by witnesses. Audio sessions frequently reveal faint clattering of hooves, soft neighs, or murmured human voices that seem to issue from nowhere. One recording captured a sequence of sounds resembling a harness race, complete with the rhythmic jingle of gear and the strained breath of unseen horses. Witness accounts extend beyond workers and investigators. Local residents who pass by the grounds after dark occasionally report seeing blurred figures moving across the track or shadows that seem too large or too fluid to be ordinary animals. Some drivers passing the area have claimed to glimpse a line of spectral racers in their headlights, only to see the figures vanish when they slow down. Children attending daytime events sometimes mention seeing horses and riders that disappear, though adults often dismiss such comments as overactive imaginations. Yet the consistency of the reports across decades suggests something more than coincidence. The historical context of the fairgrounds may explain some of the activity. Harness racing was once a major attraction at Mahoning County, drawing large crowds and fostering intense competition. Tragic accidents were not uncommon. Riders occasionally fell, horses were injured, and spectators sometimes found themselves in harm's way. Some paranormal investigators theorize that these tragic and emotionally charged events left an imprint on the fairgrounds, creating what they call a residual haunting phenomenon, in which energy from past events replays itself in certain conditions. The tracks, barns, and stables, charged with decades of activity and strong emotional experiences, may serve as a stage for these recurring apparitions. Those who have witnessed the phantom racers or heard the spectral livestock often describe a sense of awe mixed with unease. The experiences are rarely malevolent, but the presence is undeniable. The air seems colder along the track, and a faint wind sometimes carries the scent of hay, leather, or damp earth when the rest of the fairgrounds are still and silent. Observers frequently report the sensation of being watched, though no one is visible. And many have noted that the apparitions appear to move independently of the observer's position, as though unaware of being seen. Even today, the fairgrounds continue to operate as a hub of community events. During the busy fair season, the bustle of visitors, rides, and animals seems to suppress the ghostly activity. But when the crowds depart and the grounds settle into stillness, the echoes of history emerge. The track becomes a stage for spectral races. The barns resonate with the phantom sounds of livestock, and the memory of past events permeates the air. For those willing to stay after dark, the Mahoning County Fairgrounds reveal a layer of history that is both haunting and fascinating. A reminder that the past never truly leaves the land it once inhabited. The Shelby County Fairgrounds in Sydney, Ohio, have been a focal point for community gatherings, livestock shows, and seasonal celebrations for well over a century. By day, the fairgrounds bustle with activity. Families stroll along the midway. Children dart between rides. The scent of popcorn and fried foods drifts through the air, and the livestock barns echo with the lowing of cows and the braying of horses. Yet amid this lively atmosphere, there exists a presence that is far less festive a haunting, rooted in the history of the grounds and centered on a Cinderella barn that has long been the source of local lore and spine-chilling encounters. The barn in question, an imposing wooden structure dating back to the early 1900s, stands near the center of the fairgrounds. Its timbers are weathered, the paint peeling, and the interior smells faintly of hay and aged wood. Despite its age, the barn remains in use during fair season, housing livestock and hosting demonstrations. Though many workers and caretakers have reported unusual experiences that suggest the building is more than just a relic of the past. The most famous of these reports concerns a figure known simply as the Judge, a spectral presence, said to appear around the closing hour of the fair. Witnesses described the Judge as a tall man dressed in a long black coat, his appearance formal yet unsettling. He is said to stand silently in the bleachers or near the edges of the barn, observing the fairgrounds with a presence that is simultaneously commanding and unnerving. Multiple accounts emphasize his stillness. He does not move like a living being, nor does he interact with visitors. Yet those who encounter him feel his gaze, a weighty and unyielding attention that seems to track them across the barn. Just as mysteriously as he appears, the Judge vanishes without warning, often leaving behind only the faint scent of pipe smoke or the cold chill of an unexplained draft. Caretakers are the most frequent witnesses. One longtime employee, David Lawrence, recalls a summer evening when he stayed late to secure the barn. "I was making my rounds, checking the stalls, when I noticed a tall figure sitting in the bleachers. At first, I thought it was one of the last visitors or a vendor who had forgotten something," he explained. "But then I realized no one else was around. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. I swear the air got colder as I approached. When I blinked, he was gone. The bleachers were empty, but I felt like someone had been staring at me the entire time." Such encounters are not isolated. Multiple caretakers over the years have independently described similar sightings, suggesting a consistent phenomenon rather than misperception or imagination. Visitors have occasionally reported seeing the Judge as well, usually at the very end of the fair day. Children are sometimes the first to notice him, pointing toward the bleachers and asking their parents if a man in black is watching. Adults often dismiss these observations at first, but some have admitted to feeling a sudden unease or being unable to shake the sensation of being observed when walking near the barn after sunset. Photographs taken near the bleachers occasionally reveal shadowy figures or dark shapes that do not match any visible person, fueling the speculation that the Judge is more than just local legend. Paranormal investigators have explored the Shelby County Fairgrounds, focusing on the century-old barn as the epicenter of activity, using EMF detectors, thermal cameras, and audio recording devices. They have documented anomalies consistent with reports of a lingering presence. EMF readings often spike near the bleachers where the Judge is seen, while thermal imagery occasionally captures tall, human-shaped heat signatures that appear for a brief moment before disappearing. Audio recordings have captured faint footsteps across wooden floors and the subtle creak of bleachers settling, even when no one is present. Investigators theorize that the Judge may be a residual haunting, tied to a person of authority associated with the fairgrounds in its early history, possibly a fair judge or overseer whose presence remained imprinted on the barn after death. Local lore adds to the eerie reputation of the Judge. Stories suggest that he may have been a stern figure during the early days of the fair, overseeing competitions and livestock shows with rigid adherence to the rules. Some believe that his spirit lingers to maintain a silent vigil over the grounds, ensuring that the traditions of the fair continue to be respected. Others speculate that his presence is tied to unfinished business or a traumatic event associated with the barn, though no definitive records exist to confirm the origins of the haunting. Those who encounter the Judge often describe a mixture of fear and fascination. He does not appear aggressive or malevolent, yet the experience leaves a lasting impression. Witnesses frequently note an oppressive stillness when he appears, a sense that the air has thickened and time itself slows. Even after he vanishes, the feeling of being observed lingers, creating a subtle tension that pervades the barn and its surrounding area. The combination of cold drafts, visual apparitions, and the inexplicable weight of his presence contributes to the barn's reputation as one of the most haunted locations in the region. Despite the spectral sightings, the Shelby County Fairgrounds remain a vibrant community hub, hosting annual fairs, agricultural exhibitions, and events that draw visitors from across Ohio. During the bustling daytime hours, the activity of the crowds and the presence of live animals seem to suppress the paranormal manifestations. Yet, when the fair winds down and the last guests depart, the century-old barn transforms into a place where history and the supernatural converge. The judge appears, silent and imposing, as if ensuring that the spirit of the fair, its traditions, and its long-forgotten overseers remain forever etched into the grounds. The Defiance County Fairgrounds in Hicksville, Ohio, have long been a center of community gatherings, agricultural exhibitions, and seasonal entertainment. Each year, families flock to the grounds to enjoy the carnival rides, games, livestock competitions, and the grandstand shows that have been a centerpiece of the fair for generations. By day, the fairgrounds are alive with laughter, the clatter of rides, and the scent of food wafting through the air. However, beneath the festive atmosphere lies a haunting presence, rooted in tragedy and local legend, that has given the fairgrounds a reputation for paranormal activity. Central to this legend is the grandstand, once a lively stage for bands and performers during the height of the fair season. Historical records indicate that in 1914, a tragic accident occurred when part of the stage collapsed during a performance, claiming the lives of several members of a popular band. The disaster left a lasting mark on the community, and over the decades, reports have persisted of unexplained phenomena centered around the grandstand, particularly during quiet evenings when the fairgrounds are empty. Locals claim that the music of the long-deceased band can still be heard, drifting faintly through the night air, as if the performers continue to play from beyond the grave. Visitors and caretakers have reported hearing the strains of old-time carnival tunes, harmonies that seem to emanate from the grandstand itself. The music is subtle, often described as a distant echo, but distinct enough that those familiar with the fairgrounds can identify melodies reminiscent of early 20th century band arrangements. One longtime worker, Margaret Lawson, recalls an experience late one summer evening. I was walking past the grandstand after closing up the fair, and I could hear a soft, lilting tune. It wasn't coming from any speakers or equipment. There was no one there. The music faded in and out, and then, just as suddenly, it stopped. It gave me chills. Such experiences are not uncommon and have been reported consistently over decades, suggesting a lingering presence tied to the tragic events of 1914. The paranormal activity at the grandstand is not limited to auditory phenomena. Some witnesses report visual manifestations, shadows or blurred figures moving across the stage or the seating. Areas often accompanied by the faint smell of old wood, brass instruments, or tobacco smoke, as if the performers have returned to resume their final show. These apparitions are generally non-threatening, appearing to replay a fragment of the past rather than interacting with the living. Yet the effect on observers is profound, leaving them with an unsettling awareness that they are witnessing something from another time. Paranormal investigators have taken a keen interest in the Defiance County Fairgrounds, particularly the grandstand. Using a combination of EMF detectors, infrared cameras, and audio recording devices, they have documented anomalies consistent with reports of ghostly activity. EMF readings often spike near the stage area, while thermal imaging occasionally reveals fleeting, human-shaped heat signatures that vanish when approached. Audio sessions have captured faint notes resembling brass and woodwind instruments, and on occasion, harmonized chords that match the style of early 1900s marching bands. Many investigators believe these are residual, echoes-energetic imprints left by the band members at the moment of their tragic deaths, replaying under the right environmental conditions. Local lore adds a poignant layer to the haunting. Residents recall that the band, beloved by the community, had been a highlight of the fair, performing popular tunes that drew crowds from across Defiance County. The stage collapse was sudden and devastating, leaving the performers trapped under the falling structure and cutting short their lives. Some believe that the spirits of the musicians remained tethered to the grandstand, unwilling to leave the place where they once brought joy to the recurring music, faint whispers, and occasional apparitions are seen as expressions of this unfinished performance, a way for the spirits to linger in the only space they truly knew. Caretakers and fairground workers often share experiences that reinforce the legend. Late-night cleaning, maintenance, or security rounds frequently reveal inexplicable occurrences. Steps are heard echoing on empty wooden floors. Instruments seem to produce faint sounds without being touched. And cold drafts sweep through the grandstand, especially near the stage area. One former caretaker, James Whitfield, recounted an evening when he walked behind the stage to check lighting equipment. "I felt like someone was right behind me," he said. "I turned, but no one was there. Then I heard the faint sound of a drum roll and a brass note, like the band had just started their set. The hairs on my arms stood up, and I walked out slowly, never looking back." Despite the spectral activity, the Defiance County Fairgrounds continued to host annual events, drawing families, vendors, and visitors from across the region. During daytime events, the music and excitement of the fair appeared to suppress or mask the paranormal phenomena, making them less noticeable to the crowds. Yet, when the grounds empty and the night descends, the grandstand becomes a stage for echoes from the past. The faint carnival music, the shadows of performers, and the subtle environmental anomalies create a sense that the spirits of the band are rehearsing a show that was tragically cut short, replaying their final moments for anyone who dares to stay after dark. The Guernsey County Fairgrounds in Cambridge, Ohio, have long been a center of community activity, hosting annual fairs, livestock shows, carnival rides, and local gatherings. By day, the grounds are filled with laughter, the smell of fried foods and popcorn, and the excited chatter of families stroll along the midway. Children dart between games and rides, and livestock pens echo with the lowing of cows and the bleating of goats. But beneath this lively exterior lies a haunting history, a shadowed chapter that few visitors are aware of. Tied to a time when the fairgrounds were transformed into a temporary hospital during the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. During the height of the pandemic, hospitals across the nation were overwhelmed. In Cambridge, officials repurposed the fairgrounds to accommodate the sick and dying. Livestock pens became makeshift wards, tents lined the grounds, and nurses worked tirelessly to care for patients suffering from the deadly influenza. The air was thick with illness, fear, and the constant sounds of coughing, moaning, and the rustling of sheets as attendants moved from one patient to another. Thousands passed through these temporary wards, many succumbing to the disease, despite the best efforts of medical staff. The fairgrounds, once a place of joy and community, became a space of suffering, grief, and loss. Over the decades, the physical traces of that period faded. But local residents and fairground workers began reporting unusual occurrences that suggested the echoes of the past lingered. Staff who stay late to clean up after events often speak of hearing coughing in empty halls, the faint rustle of sheets, and the soft murmur of crying. These sounds are never accompanied by visible figures, yet they are distinct and unsettling, a spectral replay of the suffering that once filled the space. One night, a janitor named Helen Morgan was finishing up her duties near the old livestock pens. "I was sweeping and organizing supplies when I heard a dry, raspy cough, followed by soft sobbing," she recalled. "I turned, thinking someone was there, but the area was empty. The hairs on my arms stood up. I couldn't explain it, and I've worked there for over 20 years. These auditory phenomena are often paired with other subtle sensations. Workers report sudden cold drafts, even on warm nights, and the feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes are tracking their movements across the empty fairgrounds. Some have felt the weight of unseen hands brushing past them, or sensed a presence in areas where no one else is around. These experiences are typically brief, but powerful enough to leave a lasting impression. Many believe that the intensity of suffering during the Spanish flu left a residual imprint on the grounds, a phenomenon that paranormal researchers describe as a residual haunting energy from emotionally charged events repeating under certain conditions. Paranormal investigators have explored the fairgrounds to document these unusual occurrences, using EMF detectors, digital audio recorders, and thermal cameras. They have noted anomalies that correspond with the locations of reported hauntings. EMF readings often spike in areas that were used as temporary wards, while thermal imaging sometimes captures fleeting heat signatures with no physical source. Audio recordings have picked up faint coughs, whispered voices, and the distant rustle of sheets, matching the experiences reported by staff. These findings suggest that the fairgrounds retain a strong, energetic connection to the events of 1918, a lingering trace of the human suffering that occurred there. The emotional weight of the haunting is amplified by the historical context. Visitors and staff alike sense that the sounds are not malevolent, but rather echoes of those who experienced pain and fear in their final days. The spirit-soul energy of the deceased appear to replay moments of their suffering, bound to the site where they spent their last hours. Caretakers often describe the experience as simultaneously sorrowful and compelling, a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring impact of historical tragedies. Local residents have passed down stories of these haunted echoes for generations. Older members of the community tell of friends and relatives who encountered unexplained sounds while walking the fairgrounds alone at night. Many warn visitors not to linger near the livestock pens or the old tents after dark, not out of fear of physical danger, but because the experience can be emotionally overwhelming. The persistent reports, stretching across decades, have cemented the Guernsey County Fairgrounds as one of the region's most haunted locations, a place where history and the supernatural intersect in a hauntingly tangible way. Despite its haunted reputation, the fairgrounds continue to serve as a venue for community events, attracting families, farmers, and visitors from across Ohio. During the daytime hours, the bustle of activity, the laughter, the music, and the crowd seems to suppress the echoes of the past, masking the residual energy of the Spanish flu hospital. Yet, when the fairgrounds empty and the night falls, the shadows of history return. The faint coughs, the subtle rustle of sheets, and the soft cries of unseen patients drift across the grounds, a haunting chorus from another era. The Pike County Fairgrounds in Pickerton, Ohio, have been a center of local gatherings, livestock shows, and community celebrations for generations. By day, the grounds are alive with the laughter of children, the calls of vendors, the scent of fried foods drifting through the air, and the lowing of cattle and braying of horses in the barns. During the fair season, the main arena becomes the focal point of activity, hosting rodeos, horse shows, and other equestrian events. Yet as dawn breaks and the grounds lie quiet, there are those who claim that the fairgrounds are not entirely empty, that the spirits of the past linger, particularly in the form of a spectral horse that gallops across the dirt arena. Witnesses describe the phenomenon with a mixture of awe and fear. Early risers, caretakers, and fairground workers have reported seeing the outline of a horse materialize in the morning mist, its form blurred but unmistakably equine. It moves with a fluid, almost supernatural grace, its hooves striking the ground with a rhythm that echoes through the empty arena. The horse is usually described as dark, sometimes appearing entirely black, with a mane that flows as if caught in an invisible wind. Its presence is fleeting, visible for only a few seconds before vanishing as suddenly as it appeared, but the impact on those who witness it is lasting. Alongside these visual encounters, physical traces often accompany the ghostly horse. Many have noticed fresh hoofprints in the dirt of the arena, appearing overnight or during the early hours of the morning, even when no live animals are present. Caretakers tasked with preparing the arena for events are frequently startled to discover these prints, perfectly formed and deep enough to suggest a heavy animal, yet entirely inexplicable. Some visitors who have seen the horse vanish have turned to find the very same hoofprints etched into the muddy ground, as though the spirit of the animal has made its presence undeniably tangible. Local lore suggests that the ghostly horse may be tied to a tragic event in the fairgrounds' history. Though records are sparse, stories passed down through generations speak of a beloved fair horse that died suddenly during a competition many decades ago. According to the legend, the horse was fast, spirited, and cherished by the local community. competing in numerous events and thrilling spectators with its speed and agility. One fateful morning, the horse was injured during a race or demonstration, suffering a fatal accident in the arena. The exact details are unclear, but what remains consistent in the stories is that the horse was loved, and its sudden death left a mark on both the fairgrounds and the local consciousness. Many believe that the spectral horse is the same animal, returning each dawn to relive its final moments or to traverse the arena it once knew so well. Caretakers and early morning workers are the most frequent witnesses. One veteran employee, Mark Reynolds, recounted his experience during a quiet summer morning. "I was setting up the arena for a horse show when I noticed a dark shape moving through the mist. At first I thought it was a rider, but there was no one on the horse. I froze, and the animal just galloped across the arena, then disappeared. When I went to check, there were hoof prints in the mud, fresh and deep, as if the horse had really been there. I've worked here for over 30 years, and I've never seen anything like it." Such encounters are often accompanied by an inexplicable chill, the kind that seems to settle into the bones, in a sense of awe at witnessing something extraordinary yet otherworldly. Paranormal investigators who have explored the Pike County Fairgrounds note that the ghostly horse is consistent with residual hauntings, where an emotionally charged or traumatic event leaves an imprint on a location. In this case, the sudden death of a beloved horse in the arena could have created a lingering energy that manifests under specific conditions, such as the quiet hours of dawn when the arena is empty and the air is still. EMF readings and thermal imaging occasionally pick up anomalies during reported sightings, though the horse itself never appears on cameras with clarity, adding to the mystery. Audio recordings sometimes capture the faint sound of hoofbeats striking the ground, even when no live animals are present, further corroborating the eyewitness accounts. The phenomenon has become part of local legend, shared among residents, fair workers, and horse enthusiasts. Visitors to the fairgrounds are often told to arrive early in the morning if they wish to catch a glimpse of the ghostly horse, though sightings remain unpredictable and rare. The story of the spectral horse has also been used to explain other unexplained occurrences at the arena. Sudden cold drafts, the feeling of being watched while alone in the arena, and the occasional rustling of unseen movement in the barns adjacent to the arena. While some dismiss these experiences as imagination or coincidence, those who have seen the horse insist on the authenticity of their encounters. Despite the haunting, the Pike County Fairgrounds continue to thrive as a venue for community events, horse shows, and agricultural exhibitions. By day, the bustling energy of the fair masks any lingering spirits, and the focus of participants and visitors remains on competition, entertainment, and celebration. Yet at dawn, when the grounds are still and the arena lies empty, the legacy of the past comes alive. The ghostly horse appears, its hooves striking the dirt, its presence both a tribute to its former life and a reminder that some spirits never truly leave. The Union County Fairgrounds in Marysville, Ohio, have long been a hub of community gatherings, agricultural competitions, and seasonal festivities. Each year, the fairgrounds fill with the sounds of laughter, music, and cheering crowds, particularly around the grandstand, which serves as the centerpiece for performances, competitions, and other public events. By day, the grandstand is alive with families, fairgoers, and performers, its wooden benches packed with spectators enjoying the vibrant atmosphere. But when the fair ends and night falls, the grandstand takes on a far more sinister presence, giving rise to one of the region's most unsettling legends, the haunting known locally as the Laugher. The Laugher is described as a malevolent, yet elusive, presence that seems to occupy the upper reaches of the grandstand. Paranormal investigators first became aware of it when reviewing audio recordings from nighttime surveillance and cleanup sessions. What they captured was chilling, spontaneous, guttural laughter echoing across the empty seats. The laughter is deep, harsh, and distant, often sounding as though it originates from the far end of the grandstand. It rises and falls unpredictably, sometimes starting just as a caretaker turns a corner or sets down equipment. Those present report an immediate sense of unease, as if unseen eyes are studying them, enjoying their discomfort. Multiple witnesses have reported experiencing the phenomenon firsthand. One former Fairgrounds employee, Thomas Reed, recounted his encounter during a late-night cleanup following a summer fair. "I was alone, picking up debris near the top rows of the grandstand," he said. "Suddenly, I heard a deep, almost guttural laugh echoing through the empty structure. It was so loud, so close, yet, when I looked around, there was no one there. I froze. My skin crawled. It felt alive, like something was sitting up there, watching me, enjoying every second of my fear." These types of encounters are not isolated. Reports of the laughter span decades, each description consistent with the others, reinforcing the belief in a lingering spectral presence. Visual encounters, though rare, add an extra layer of terror to the legend. During a severe thunderstorm, one night, a group of investigators captured a fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure sitting motionless in the grandstand, clapping slowly in time with a phantom rhythm only it could hear. The figure was indistinct, dark, and seemingly human in shape, but it emitted a sense of menace that made anyone observing instinctively recoil. Lightning illuminated the figure in stark relief for a split second, showing it perched upright, clapping deliberately as if applauding some unseen performance. When the light vanished, so did the figure, leaving only the echoes of its laughter bouncing off the wooden structure. Investigators, equipped with EMF meters and thermal imaging cameras, have documented anomalous readings in the grandstand, particularly in the upper tiers, where the laugher is often reported. Spikes in electromagnetic fields, sudden temperature drops, and shadowy heat signatures appear without any physical explanation. AVP sessions conducted in the area consistently pick up guttural laughs, sometimes punctuated by soft, almost imperceptible whispers. Although the origin of these sounds remains a mystery, many believe they are residual energy or the manifestation of a spirit bound to the space by intense emotion, possibly anger, grief, or unresolved frustration tied to events in the grandstand's past. Local folklore offers potential clues to the origin of the laugher. Some older residents claim that, decades ago, a man known for his malicious pranks frequented the fairgrounds, particularly the grandstand. During performances, he was notorious for unsettling audiences, laughing cruelly at mistakes or misfortunes, and instilling fear in performers and fairgoers alike. According to legend, he died unexpectedly under tragic circumstances, leaving behind a presence so tied to the grandstand that his laughter echoed beyond the grave. Others suggest the entity is not a former human at all, but a lingering energy formed from years of intense crowd excitement, rivalry, and the emotional highs and lows that the grandstand witnessed through generations. Regardless of its origin, the laugher continues to affect those who work or linger at the fairgrounds after dark. Many caretakers describe a chilling feeling of being observed, an inexplicable pressure in the air, or the sensation that the very boards beneath their feet are vibrating in sympathy with the distant laughter. Attempts to interact with the presence often result in the laughter intensifying or shifting location, as if the laugher is deliberately taunting those who attempt to confront it. Some visitors have even claimed to see fleeting shadows darting between the rows, moving just beyond the corner of their vision, reinforcing the idea of a sentient, watchful presence. Despite the paranormal activity, the Union County Fairgrounds remain a vibrant part of the community. By day, the grandstand is a place of joy, music, and celebration, its haunted past masked by the energy of festivals and competitions. Yet, when the lights dim and the fairgrounds fall silent, the atmosphere changes. The wooden benches, once filled with cheering crowds, become a stage for something far more unsettling. The laugher awakens in the stillness, its guttural, echoing laughter filling the empty structure and reminding anyone present that the grandstand is never truly empty. The legend of the laugher has become a defining aspect of the Union County Fairgrounds history, attracting both curiosity and caution. Those who experience it report a deep, lingering sense of awe and fear, an encounter with something entirely beyond the natural world. On stormy nights, particularly during lightning and thunder, the figure may be glimpsed, clapping slowly, as the guttural laughter rolls across the empty seats. It is a haunting that refuses to fade, a presence tied inexorably to the grandstand, and a reminder that even places of joy can harbor echoes of a darker past. The Highland County Fairgrounds in Hillsboro, Ohio, have long been a center for community gatherings, agricultural exhibitions, and seasonal fairs. By day, the grounds are alive with the cheerful chaos of festival rides, the calls of vendors, the scent of popcorn and cotton candy, and the laughter of children darting between attractions. The grandstands, livestock pens, and Carnival midway form a patchwork of activity, celebrating the county's agricultural heritage and community spirit. Yet when night falls and the fair ends, the fairgrounds transform into a place that is less familiar and far more unsettling. For decades, locals and paranormal investigators have reported strange phenomena, particularly the appearance of translucent carnival wagons moving silently across the empty fields. Witnesses describe these apparitions as faintly glowing silhouettes of classic carnival wagons, appearing to float just above the ground as they traverse the fairgrounds. They retain the shapes and details of their early 20th century counterparts' painted panels, faded advertisements, and wooden wheels, but appear transparent, as if the material world cannot contain them. Some observers report seeing the wagons lining up along the midway, in the very spots they would have occupied during fairs long past, while others see them wandering in circles across open fields, as though endlessly retracing a route from another era. The movements are smooth, deliberate, and eerily quiet, contrasting sharply with the lively sounds one would expect from functioning carnival equipment. The experiences of those who witness these spectral wagons are consistently chilling. Local farmer and longtime resident Samuel Keaton recalled an early morning encounter while walking across the fairgrounds before dawn. "I thought it was a mist rolling across the fields, but then I saw them old wagons, glowing faintly, moving in a line as if a parade was passing through. I could see the designs on the side, little advertisements for popcorn and rides, and even the wooden spokes of the wheels. But there was no one inside. It was silent, except for this faint, echoing creak, like the wagons were brushing along the earth. I froze. I didn't move for what felt like hours." Others have had similar experiences, sometimes witnessing the wagons during foggy nights or on quiet evenings when the fairgrounds are otherwise empty. Caretakers setting up for events have noticed these ghostly vehicles lingering near tents or along pathways that have not been used in decades. In many cases, they report an immediate drop in temperature in the area where the wagons appear, accompanied by a sense of being watched. Some claim to hear the faint tinkle of bells or the creak of wagon wheels, although no physical source can be found. The phenomenon seems entirely self-contained, appearing and disappearing without warning, leaving those who encounter it questioning what is real and what is a lingering echo of the past. Paranormal investigators who have explored the Highland County Fairgrounds suggest that the spectral wagons are a type of residual haunting. Residual hauntings are thought to occur when emotionally charged or historically significant events imprint themselves on a location, replaying under specific conditions without direct interaction with the living. In this case, the fairs of the early 1900s may have created such an imprint. Traveling carnival wagons, full of bright colors, excitement, and the sounds of early 20th century celebrations, would have passed through the fairgrounds regularly. The energy of laughter, music, and anticipation, combined with the intensity of human activity, may have left a lasting imprint on the land itself, replaying as ghostly echoes for modern witnesses. EMF readings and thermal imaging taken during reported sightings frequently show anomalies, though nothing appears on conventional cameras. In particular, investigators note cold spots around the fields where the wagons are most often seen. Audio recordings sometimes capture the faint clatter of wooden wheels or the distant jingle of a bell, sounds that vanish when approached. These findings reinforce the theory that the wagons are not interactive spirits, but residual echoes, looping through a scene that no longer exists, visible only under certain atmospheric conditions. Local legend offers another layer of context. Residents recount stories of traveling fairs that passed through Highland County in the early 1900s, often staying for only a night or two before moving on. The fairs brought joy, excitement, and novelty, but life on the road was harsh for those who operated them. Wagons were packed tightly, animals and performers worked tirelessly, and accidents were not uncommon. It is said that the spirit of these transient fairs became intertwined with the fairgrounds themselves, leaving behind the spectral imprint of wagons that continued to circle the grounds long after the traveling carnivals vanished from Ohio. Some witnesses describe the spectral wagons as more than just passive echoes. At times, they seemed to move with intent, following the lines of the original midway or circling the perimeter of the fairgrounds. Caretakers have reported feeling the sensation of being herded or guided, as if the wagons are enacting routines they once performed during the height of carnival season. Others note that the wagons seem to appear more often during fog, rain, or cold nights, suggesting that atmospheric conditions may help trigger the residual energy, making it visible to those sensitive to such phenomena. Despite the eerie presence of these ghostly wagons, the Highland County Fairgrounds remain a vital community space. Festivals, agricultural events, and family gatherings continue to occupy the site, filling it with vibrant life during the day. Yet when the festivities end and the grounds lie in silence, the past reasserts itself. The translucent wagons glide across the fields, retracing their roots from a century ago, a haunting tribute to a bygone era of traveling fairs and roadside entertainment. The Delaware County Fairgrounds in Delaware, Ohio, have long been a center of community celebration, agriculture, and equestrian competition. By day, the grounds are alive with the rhythmic clatter of hooves on dirt tracks, the cheers of spectators, and the aroma of fair foods drifting across the stands. Horses of all breeds line the stables, and harness racing remains one of the fairgrounds' signature events, drawing crowds from across the county and beyond. Yet, as the sun begins to set and shadows stretch across the track, there is a presence that transforms the fairgrounds from a place of competition to a stage for something far more mysterious and spectral. Locals refer to it as the ghostly jockey, a spirit forever tied to the harness racing track and to a tragedy that occurred over a century ago. The legend of the ghostly jockey centers around a race in 1910. Witnesses from that time recall a high-stakes event in which a promising young rider and his horse were leading the pack. The finish line tantalizingly close. Spectators cheered. The driver urged his horse forward, but in a sudden and catastrophic collision, the horse and jockey were thrown violently to the track. The young man never recovered from his injuries, and the horse succumbed as well. News of the accident shook the community, leaving a lingering sadness that seemed to seep into the grounds themselves. Over the years, tales began to surface of a glowing horse and a rider who appeared at dusk, circling the track as though determined to complete a race that was abruptly ended more than a century ago. Eyewitnesses described the phenomenon with striking consistency. As twilight descends, the air along the harness racing track seems to shimmer. Then, from the corner of one's eye, a glowing figure emerges, a spectral horse, luminous against a darkening backdrop, carrying a rider whose form is partially transparent, yet unmistakably human. The ghostly jockey is always mounted, sitting upright with the poise of a professional driver, reins clutched firmly. The horse moves with grace, its hooves striking the dirt track in a rhythm that echoes eerily across the empty stands. Despite the unnatural glow and ethereal form, the movement is undeniably real, creating hoofprints in the dirt and raising a chill along the spine of anyone observing. Caretakers and fairground staff are among the most frequent witnesses. One longtime employee, Linda Harper, recalled a late evening when she stayed behind to close the track after a private harness race. "I was gathering equipment near the far stretch of the track when I saw it," she said. "A horse, glowing faintly, moving steadily along the rails, and a rider who looked like he was urging it forward. I froze. I couldn't believe my eyes." The figure kept moving, following the path of the track, and then gradually faded as the sun dipped below the horizon. When I looked at the dirt where the hooves had been, there were impressions perfectly formed, like a real horse had just galloped past. Experiences, like Harper's, are repeated in interviews with other early evening workers, some of whom report hearing the soft jingle of harness gear and the rhythmic pounding of hooves, even when no horse or rider is present. Paranormal investigators have studied the Delaware County Fairgrounds for decades, and the ghostly jockey is considered a classic example of a residual haunting. Residual hauntings occur when intense emotional events leave an imprint on a location, replaying under certain conditions without direct interaction with the living. In this case, the violent death of the jockey and horse may have left such a mark on the track, manifesting each evening during the transition between day and night. EMF readings and thermal cameras sometimes register anomalies along the track, and EVP sessions occasionally capture the faint whisper of rain jingles or the soft exhalation of a horse. Though the spectral forms themselves remain elusive to digital capture, local folklore adds depth to the story. Many residents believe that the ghostly jockey continues to race because he is trapped in the moment of his final race, eternally pursuing a finish line that was denied to him in life. Others suggest that the horse itself may be equally trapped, its spirit tethered to the rider and the track, forever bound to the motion and rhythm of harness racing. Stories passed down from families who attended the fair in the early 1900s often recount sightings of luminous figures at dusk, giving rise to a communal awareness of the spectral presence that has persisted across generations. Witnesses frequently report a range of sensations accompanying the apparition. A cold breeze often accompanies the glowing horse, cutting through the warmth of summer evenings and leaving an inexplicable chill. Some feel an emotional weight, a sense of urgency or unfinished business that seems to emanate from the figure. Those who are particularly sensitive to energy often describe a heightened awareness, a feeling of being watched, or a pull toward the track, as if drawn into the spectral race themselves. Despite its eerie nature, the ghostly jockey has become part of the fairground's identity. Families, historians, and curious visitors are drawn to the track at dusk, hoping to catch a glimpse of the glowing horse and its determined rider. While the daytime events remain lively and ordinary, the legend adds an air of mystery to the fairgrounds, blending local history with the paranormal in a way that continues to captivate and unsettle. The Delaware County Fairgrounds, therefore, exist in two overlapping realities. By day, the track is alive with competition, celebration, and the tangible excitement of harness racing. By dusk, the past emerges, manifesting in the ghostly jockey, who rides tirelessly along the track he never completed in life. The glowing horse and rider are a reminder of tragedy, determination, and the lingering power of unresolved events, visible to those who wait patiently and open themselves to the extraordinary. The Erie County Fairgrounds in Sandusky, Ohio, have long been a vibrant hub of summer festivities, drawing crowds from across the region. By day, the grounds are filled with the scents of fried foods, the cries of carnival barkers, and the laughter of children running between rides and game booths. Livestock exhibitions, harness races, and music stages create a lively patchwork of entertainment, making the fairgrounds a centerpiece of community life along the shores of Lake Erie. Yet beneath the cheerful chaos, there exists a darker, more mysterious side of the fairgrounds, one that emerges when the sun sets and the lake's waves crash quietly against the shoreline. Here, tales of a ghostly ferryman and phantom passengers have persisted for over a century, casting a spectral shadow over the fairgrounds that few dare to ignore. The legend centers on a ferryman who once operated a small boat shuttle across a section of Lake Erie near Sandusky. Local lore says he was a dependable man, guiding passengers safely across the lake for decades. On a stormy summer evening in the late 1800s, the ferryman took on an unusually large number of passengers, eager to return to the safety of shore. A sudden squall struck, churning the waters and driving the boat onto jagged rocks. The vessel capsized, claiming the lives of all aboard. The ferryman's body was never recovered, leaving behind only the haunting echo of a man who perished doing the work he had done for a lifetime. Since that fateful night, eyewitnesses have reported the ferryman's ghost wandering near the fairgrounds docks, calling out for passengers who never appear. Those who have witnessed the apparition describe a tall, shadowy figure, sometimes glowing faintly, standing at the edge of the water or pacing the dock. His posture is upright, yet there is an undeniable air of longing and sorrow in his movements. At times, witnesses hear the faint creak of an old boat rocking against the docks, though no vessel is present. Others report hearing a low, mournful call, a desperate cry for passengers that seems to echo across the water and into the fairgrounds. The sound is chilling, cutting through the laughter and chatter of summer evening events, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who encounters it. Local fishermen and longtime residents often speak of eerie coincidences. On nights when the lake is calm, but the sky heavy with fog, some claim to see small silhouettes moving across the water's surface, as if phantom passengers are boarding an invisible vessel. The ferryman calls out, beckoning them, and the figures vanish before reaching the shore. Witnesses describe a cold, salty breeze that carries a faint scent of wet wood and iron reminiscent of an old boat tied to the docks. Even the most skeptical observers admit to a profound sense of unease, a feeling that the boundary between the living and the dead has thinned along this stretch of Lake Erie. Paranormal investigations of the Erie County Fairgrounds corroborate these stories. EMF readings taken near the docks often spike unpredictably, and thermal imaging has recorded brief, unexplained heat signatures resembling human figures. Audio sessions have captured faint voices, whispers of help or wait for me, interwoven with the natural sounds of waves and wind. Investigators suggest the ghostly ferryman represents a residual haunting, a type of paranormal phenomenon where a traumatic event leaves an imprint on the environment. The ferryman's death, combined with the dramatic storm and the panic of the passengers, may have created a lasting imprint that manifests during certain conditions, particularly during foggy evenings, at dusk, or during high tides when the lake's energy is amplified. Some witnesses claim that the ferryman occasionally interacts with the living. During the quieter months, caretakers checking the docks report seeing him appear suddenly, moving along the pier as if he is guiding unseen passengers. Objects near the water, such as ropes or small buoys, are sometimes found displaced as if touched by an invisible hand. At other times, faint footsteps are heard across the wooden planks, pausing at intervals, then fading into silence. Those who encounter the ferryman often describe a profound mixture of fear and sorrow, sensing both the tragedy that befell him and a lingering determination to continue his duty, even in death. The surrounding fairgrounds themselves seem to echo the ferryman's presence. On summer nights, when the festival has ended, fair workers have reported hearing laughter blending strangely with the sound of crashing waves. The laughter appears to come from no visible crowd, carrying a sense of playfulness tinged with melancholy. It is as if the joyful energy of the fair has become intertwined with the unresolved tragedy of the ferryman, creating an atmosphere where the living and the dead coexist in overlapping layers. Local folklore strengthens the haunting's allure. Elders recount stories passed down from generation to generation, a fisherman warning travelers to avoid the docks after dark, or of fairgoers glimpsing a glowing figure in the water's mist. Some believe that the ferryman's ghost serves as a guardian, ensuring that visitors respect the waters that claimed him. Others see him as a restless spirit, eternally searching for passengers who will never arrive, trapped in the liminal space between lake and land. Despite the eerie reputation, the Erie County Fairgrounds remain a cherished part of the community. Families still flock to the rides, exhibitions, and food stands during fair season, filling the grounds with energy that contrasts sharply with the ghostly apparitions that appear after hours. The legend of the ferryman adds a layer of mystery, reminding visitors of the fairgrounds' deep connection to history, tragedy, and the enduring presence of spirits. And so, dear wanderers, our journey through Ohio's cursed fairgrounds comes to an end. Once, these were places of joy where families gathered, music played, and laughter carried on the wind. Now, those same winds carry whispers of the past. If you ever find yourself walking through an empty fairground after dark, listen carefully. You might hear distant laughter, or the creak of a Ferris wheel that hasn't turned in decades. And if someone calls your name, don't answer. Thank you for joining us tonight on this haunted journey. If you enjoyed exploring Ohio's forgotten fairgrounds, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss our next descent into darkness. Until next time, my friends, keep your lanterns lit, your hearts steady, and remember, the past never truly leaves us. See you in the dark.